Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the full moon in the first decan of Aquarius. We're going to be diving into all of the significations associated with the Sun in Leo, the Jupiter Cazimi in Leo on this full moon. We're going to talk about the moon conjoining Pluto and the ramifications of that. We're going to talk about Saturn hosting that moon. And we're going to do an I-Ching and an animal. And we're going to take you through the next few weeks getting to the the new moon solar eclipse in Leo 3 in mid-August. So buckle in for an hour or so and let's talk about it and get through it. So a couple of things before we dive into the astrology, just a couple announcements. Of course, we're talking full moon in Aquarius I today, but before we do that, if you would like to visit my website, I would appreciate that. It is a great way to reach out and get a reading. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. There's all sorts of different readings associated with learning about your natal chart, learning about the transits in your life that are playing out and helping to activate some of the planets in your chart. I also offer tutoring sessions. I do oracle questions if you have like one particular issue that you'd like to have the astrological analysis of. I do that as well. And I've got some classes that are going to be coming up in the fall. So make sure you're on my newsletter and that you're checking out spencermichaud.com. You can also visit the store at spencermichaud.com where I have pre-recorded webinars, where I have decan webinars, where I'm exploring all 36 decans through 12 separate webinars where we talk about the associations with tarot, fixed stars, mythology, etc. A lot of my past research has been poured into those, and some of that is utilized on this channel, and you can get a more in-depth exploration to help you understand your own chart through that. And then I did a series with my partner, Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo, called Dignity and Devotion, where we break down the 7 traditional planets and how to craft a ritual practice around them. Speaking of Third Coast Mojo, you can find all sorts of cool stuff over on Etsy. So if you want to support Tanya and the work that she does over there, you can find all sorts of interesting things. The feature this month is Easy Life, which is Sun in Leo election, kind of smoothing the path around the solar significations. We're in the midst of Leo season right now. We got some challenging things with the moon and Pluto going on, so maybe this can smooth out the path moving forward. Midnight Money Soap is back. This is a conjure formula with Jupiter in Cancer. So this is a great one for facilitating the flow of abundance within your life. Come to Me oil is a Venus with a oil with exalted Venus in Pisces if you're trying to attract love or appreciation or things of that nature. And then finally, there's a Hermes harvest with Mercury and Virgo. We have Mercury that just stationed direct. So this is one that can help improve focus and get you organized and all of those things. So check her out on Third Coast Mojo. You can also subscribe to our newsletter if you want to know when I'm going to be going live. Or when new things are released through Third Coast Mojo, or if there's new classes coming. So make sure you sign up for the newsletter. And if you want to support the channel, you can purchase a super chat today while I'm live on YouTube, or go to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron of the channel. Thank you so much for everyone who has been able to contribute. I always appreciate that, and it really does help me to continue to do the work that I do here. Okay, those are our announcements. We are looking at a full moon in Aquarius I, 6 degrees of Aquarius. It's a few features. Let's take an overview first, and then we'll talk about the Sun in Leo 1 and the Moon in Aquarius 1. We'll talk about Saturn in Aries 2. So a couple features that we are experiencing here is this full moon is conjoining a retrograde Pluto that is about to go out of bounds in its southern declination. And it is also conjoining the North Node in Aquarius, which hasn't quite happened as I'm recording this, but it will when we go to this weekend. This weekend we have, as I'm recording this on Friday, the 24th, Saturn will station retrograde on Sunday the 26th, and the North Node will move into Aquarius. So this full moon next Wednesday, okay, this is going to be next Wednesday, the 29th, is going to be co-present with the North Node. Now, the North Node in Aquarius is increasing our desire to Maybe escape some harsh visibility, maybe escape from a situation of conflict, or to go off into the unknown, to be able to unravel some old karmic knots that can hopefully lead us into a new and better tomorrow. This is a full moon that may reveal some corruption with visibility. It may reveal some feelings of fear or insecurity around having a platform, those types of things. There are certain things in this world where we don't know. This is a sea of humanity that we are diving into on this beautiful internet platform, and some people have good intentions and other people don't. And this is some of the things that we're having to wrestle with when we are seeing a full moon from the Leo sun, with a pressure to become more visible. And then really understanding maybe some of the consequences of that or the challenges around that. So these are some of the things that we might be breaking down today with full moon conjunct Pluto on the north node. Jupiter and the south node will be co-present with the sun. Jupiter will also be in a cazimi, which is a renewal in the heart of the sun. So Jupiter cazimi here. We'll talk about that in a second. But the south node, potentially reducing our desire either for visibility or for fighting for some kind of longly cherished belief. We might be trying to step down off of a throne of power or a throne of visibility because it might just feel unsafe. It might feel like that belief does not serve the type of life that we want to live or exhibit or embrace. It might be that we've learned some new things moving forward and we want to reevaluate some of our values before we keep fighting a losing battle. This might also be where we are retreating on some level so that we can live to fight another day. And this may be an important seed for a new way of approaching our authenticity, right? With Jupiter in the first decan, we might be playing new roles and planting the seed with the Jupiter cazimi of a new role that we might want to play out in the collective. And it may look very different than the one we've been playing in the past. So this is a really important full moon that is anticipating a much, I think, I don't know if impactful is the right word, but a very important series of eclipses that we're going to see in August. Okay, so this is like the last full moon before eclipse season, and there's going to be some things that are revealed to us that may help plant the seed for different ways of showing up in our public spaces or in our families or in our relationships or anything where we're working with exerting our will versus being able to receive energy or like go with the flow or things of that nature. I'll talk about a book that I'm reading lately too that's really been helping me with some of these things. It's called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall B. Rosenberg, and it is really awesome. I'm about halfway through it, so I hesitate to go too deeply into it because I don't want to make the mistake of learning half of the technique and then not communicating it as clearly as I would if I had a full, complete understanding of it. But there's some things already that we can talk through with it that I think could be helpful, especially for the moon trining Uranus and Mars, right? Like the moon in Aquarius and the south node moving into Leo and the north node into Aquarius. To me, this book has come to me at the time when the north node in Aquarius is going to encourage us to be able to observe a situation before either commenting on it or before engaging in conflicts. The ability to increase our observational skills and our objectivity is really important, and I feel like this book and these techniques are really useful for that. The moon is going to be trining Uranus and Mars during this full moon as well, so we'll talk about the relationship between those two planets. We've had I've been witnessing a lot of verbal conflicts that have played out with Mars and Gemini, and some that are shocking and some that draw in larger groups of people, right? That are trying to, what may start off as a conflict between two people can kind of take on a life of its own with Uranus involved there, with that being more of a collective planet. And this can be kind of shocking and unexpected. So we're going to look at kind of the relationship with that as well. The other thing that's happening at this full moon that is a prominent feature of it is Mars is squaring Venus. So there is a Mars-Venus square that's kind of built into the full moon, with Mars in the third decan of Gemini and Venus in the third decan of Virgo, a place where Venus is fairly uncomfortable. It is in its fall. So Mars is in that overcoming square to Venus, so that we could be feeling like there are too many options, and that's putting a lot of pressure on our ability to bring something into form and feeling of overwhelm. When I was coming to the live today, my brain was starting to get activated with a lot of things that I've been trying to parse out in different categories of my life with lots of different information. There's just been a lot of different voices that have come in different projects lately that I've been trying to work through and to balance. And I think that with this Mars-Venus square, we could just start feeling a little bit of overwhelm around that. And how do we work through those feelings? How do we prioritize? How do we let go of some of the distractions? How do we let go of some of the lines in the sand we may have drawn about things in our life, whether they were positive or negative, like where we get into black or white thinking? I think this is something that we could work through with this as well. Okay, so that's kind of the bigger picture with all the themes that I would like to explore with this today. This is let's see, let me share my screen again. Where did it go? I have my thing up here. There we go. Just want to show you some of the things on the screen first. Okay. All right, so here is our full moon, right? Of the things I was discussing, you can see that there is the Jupiter Cazimi here, 6 degrees of Leo, opposing the 6-degree Aquarius moon, okay, just having come off of a conjunction with Pluto, okay, really close to a conjunction. You can see here the north node is moved into Aquarius, and the south node is moving into Leo. Here is the Mars square with Venus, okay, putting a lot of pressure from what's called the overcoming position. This is where it is earlier in the zodiac from our kind of central perspective at the middle of the chart, and it's kind of asserting its dominance on Venus. So a lot of the martial conflicts in Gemini areas of our life are putting a lot of pressure on the Virgo areas of our life. Here is Saturn hosting, okay. Here's Saturn right here hosting the moon and Pluto, I guess you could say, if we think about the guest host relationship there. Saturn going retrograde, where we're thinking about how the values that we are stating, either publicly or in our private lives, we might be reviewing some of those things. Like we may be really taking a good hard look at how we express ourselves, or how the worlds that we inhabit and that we are either forced to inhabit due to other people's desires, and how we might start to create our own world that feels comfortable to us. This is something that, as Saturn is retrograding back into Aries 2, we might be reviewing how we create our worlds. Like, how do we want to put ourselves out there? What are our royal decrees? What are our non-negotiables? How do we start negotiating some of those things if we're not getting what we need? I'll talk about that with nonviolent communication, because being able to identify our feelings through observation, and then being able to state our needs and receive other people's feelings and needs appropriately, is part of the whole situation. And to be able to make requests versus demands. I've read the first part about expressing our own needs. I haven't gotten quite to the second part about receiving other people's needs yet. So give me some grace and patience, I hope, with learning about that part of it. But there's some real interesting skill sets, and it's really helping me to examine my communication style as well, and kind of hopefully eventually to be able to assist others with this and to kind of model this type of behavior. Deep Kumara, let's see, Deep Kumaru Karam Radya 9791 says, Aquarius here. Nice to see you, fellow Aquarius person here. I guess I have an Aquarius South node, so I'm not an Aquarius Sun, but we have another Aquarius stopping in. Amara Wiley's here. Says, hi, Amara from New Jersey stopping in. Nice to see you, Amara. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. It's been a little while since we've gotten an update with one another, but I hope everything's going well your way. This is probably a big full moon for you. This is probably activating a lot of things in your chart, isn't it? So hopefully we'll get to break that down and that everything's going well in your world, my friend. Okay. So those are sort of the pieces that I've been looking at in the chart. So what I would like to do is I would like to break down those things individually. And let's start with the sun in Leo. I like to start with the sun when we talk about lunations, because the sun is like a giant spotlight. And what the sun is going to do as a spotlight is going to bring things to our awareness. It's going to bring things to light. It is a collective aha moment as far as what we are potentially trying to consciously achieve. The moon is a receptive vehicle. It is a manifester. It says, I'm going to collect all the light. I'm going to collect all the intention from the sun, and I'm going to make something with it. I'm going to manifest something. So when we have full moons, we have an intention of the sun that is being received in the opposite manner with the full moon, right? We were trying to kind of, I don't know if harmonize is the right words, but we're trying to hold the paradox of opposites at a full moon. And it's really fascinating to me because we plant the seed at the new moon, and the moon is in the same decan, it's in the same degree at the new moon, and it's saying, all right, I'm ready to receive that light, and I have the same, similar intentions, etc. But at the full moon, it's sort of there's a push and a pull. So what are we trying to achieve with the sun in Leo 1? We're trying to achieve the ability to wield visibility and invisibility. It also is about bringing different roles into our awareness, and how do we begin the journey to authenticity, okay? Begin the journey to authenticity. So we have a Leo 1 sun that is represented by the Five of Wands. So the Five of Wands is a card where we see people in a mock battle, in a competition, in a place where we are sort of feeling like we need to compete with other people for some kind of selection or specialness, right? We see this competition in business. We see this competition within families. We see this competition in sports. Like, this is a very sporting event type of card. And we call it the Lord of Strife. Austin Coppock calls it the Spotlight in 36 Faces. It is a Saturn-ruled decan in a solar-ruled sign. So it is the room in the temple of Leo, right? The solar temple that is everything. It's all about the sun in that temple. But this is the Saturn corner of that temple. And it's a little bit of an awkward marriage because Saturn is more associated with invisibility, with exile rather than selection, with pressure or bindingness rather than being able to assert our own will. So we may feel forced into playing a certain role that we're a little bit uncomfortable with. We may be trying on different masks in this decan. Okay, so some themes. I'm going to give you some themes to consider here. Mock battles, athletic contests, pressure to strive, to be able to become more visible, spotlights, stages, and role-playing, performance anxiety, and stage fright. This is a really important thing. I've talked to a lot of people that have Leo 1 placements, and they're not always necessarily comfortable with visibility. I know for me personally, as a musician in the past, I'm a little bit of a private person. I do a lot of public things, but being on display, it triggered a lot of insecurities in me in the past. And it was a real struggle to get to the stage, like to be able to get to the gig. To the pressure before the gig made me practice a lot because I feared embarrassment. I think that Leo one, a lot of the fear is being embarrassed or not being able to present ourselves in an authentic fashion. When I actually got on the stage, it wasn't as bad. Like for whatever reason, a switch flipped and I felt good when I was in the moment. But the getting to the point, this is part of Leo one, where we're, maybe feeling some anxiety when our moment is coming, right? And we might be getting some of that nervous energy around it. Masks and crafting a persona. This is, Austin in his book talks a lot about being able to utilize the spotlight in a way that is related to our own personal will. And sometimes we want to become visible. Sometimes we want to utilize our ability to be cloaked or invisible. Like if there is a threat looming, we might retreat so that we can live to fight another day. So learning to master appearances and direct attention in the direction that we want it to go versus where maybe the collective may be driving that attention. And we've all made mistakes with this in the past. Like sometimes as we're learning to communicate, or as we're learning, a lot of times when we're young, we are trying on new ways of being in the world, new ways of speaking up or speaking out, or new ways of engaging with the public. And it's not always easy to understand where our authenticity lies within that. And sometimes we haven't always learned the skills that we need, like this book, to communicate what we're seeing and our authentic feelings in a way that can facilitate getting what we want or need out of that situation, or making the change that we want or to see in the world. Sometimes the way that we approach issues and the way that we utilize our spotlight can lead to the opposite, can lead to feeling less safe when we're advocating for safety. It can lead to feeling less included rather than trying to get inclusion through the way that we are participating. So this is the first stage of learning about how to marry your inner core essence with your external expression to be able to feel a sense of validation for that, right? And that validation doesn't necessarily have to come from an external source. That validation can come from you just looking in the mirror and saying, you know what, I did the best that I could today. And tomorrow's another day. And I feel good about what I came and presented. And I feel good about how I did that. And people can either take it or that they can leave it. And their feelings, I think this is the thing that nonviolent communication has really been helping me with, is understanding that we as individuals are not always responsible, or maybe ever responsible, for other people's feelings and emotions. Now, that doesn't mean that we become narcissistic. Our actions realistically, our actions can trigger different emotions in other people, different actions in other people. And that's important to realize. But at the same time, their feelings are their own. And as people who have grown up with trauma or in situations of oppression or abuse, we often learn there's different ways. We can learn through being very defensive. We can learn through going on the attack before we feel like we're going to be attacked. We can also become people pleasers, where we just become doormats and get steamrolled by everyone else's energy because we're trying to control other people's reactions and emotions to us. And this is something that I think that we can really learn a lot through the Leo 1 energy. So questions for reflection here. Where are you feeling pressure in your life to perform, or the pressure of being visible? It may not be that you have to perform. It may be that you're already visible and you're feeling some pressure because there's some things in your life that are making that spotlight feel hot, Could be attention isn't always good. Like, I think that there's a lot of situations where we might be getting negative attention, and that could be making us feel really uncomfortable as well. What role are you being asked to play? Understanding how to approach your particular responsibility within either utilizing your spotlight is very important. Sometimes we are trying to play roles that we're not suited towards, or that we don't have the skills to execute yet. And when that happens, sometimes we get pushback. Sometimes we get pushback from our communities. Sometimes we get pushback from our own sense of not feeling in alignment or getting the results that we had intended. So what role are you being asked to play? And then asking yourself, is this an appropriate role for me? Am I ready for this role? Is this something that feels like it's in alignment with my essence? Or is this something that's being thrust upon me? I've talked to a lot of Leo I Saturn people with Saturn in this deck, and a lot of times they felt like they were forced to play roles as a young person that didn't suit them. Sometimes they had to be like the class clown or the family comedian or something like that. And that just put a lot of pressure on them and brought them visibility that was uncomfortable. Or there could be other reasons why being visible wasn't comfortable in the past. Is your outer persona in alignment with your inner truth? I think we just covered that question here. Is it time to step into the light or seek refuge? That's interesting. Is it time to step into the light or seek refuge? Sometimes that changes. Sometimes it changes daily. Sometimes it changes week to week or month to month. We all have different seasons of our life where visibility is unavoidable. And we all have seasons of our life where visibility may not be in the stars for us. We have times, like if we're in a 10th house perfection year, where the 10th house is the most visible part of the chart, 10th and 11th house, right? Where we may be having to deal with public attention. When we move into a 12th house year, or when we start going into the lower half of the chart, we might be dealing with maybe not being in a more visible position. There is ideas of the chart being sort of a wheel of fortune. Sometimes we're at the top of the wheel of fortune, and other times we're at the bottom. And sometimes that can shift over time. And we have to learn how to deal gracefully with being at all points within that wheel. How do we become in alignment with the center of the hub, rather than getting tossed and turned by the twists of 2K or chance or fortune? That to me is the liberating part of all this. How do we become connected to our own center that isn't going to be thrust up and down, up and down, up and down? Okay. What ambition in you has been ignited? This is, I think, an important theme in Leo I. What types of apathy have been burned away? And I say that because the transition between Cancer 3 and Leo I are a transition between saying, I've had enough. I've had my fill. I don't know what's next, but I've had enough of this. And you see the Four of Cups with someone with their arms folded with the Four of Cups. And what is going on there is we've satiated the needs of the body. We have more than we need. The moon is associated with the body, Cancer being hosted by the moon. We are moving into a solar ruled area where we are igniting the flames of passion. We're trying to find meaning that is not necessarily just related to the body. It might be more related to the spirit. So what ambition is starting to be reignited again after we get past this feeling of being too full? And then finally, how can you learn to direct and focus your will? This is an important one because there are two different ways we can do this. Sometimes we can over-assert our will, where we make demands rather than requests, and that can lead to resistance and rebellion from people. Or we can under-assert our will, where we're becoming a doormat for people and we're not really speaking up and asking for what we need. One of the things that the Marshall Rosenberg Nonviolent Communication book is teaching me is that it's making me realize how difficult it can be to articulate a feeling and a need. I know as someone who has a lot of Cancer placements, asking for what I want has not always been direct. And the Cancer energy sort of skirts around an issue. It will go sideways. It will go around what it really wants. It will implicate through nuance. I would really like this, but we don't come out and state it for fear of rejection. And I think that the courage that we need in Leo is to be able to state our needs clearly without aggression and violence, and without them becoming demands. leaving space for the other person to state their needs and wants, and for us to come to a harmonization. Sometimes our needs and wants conflict with other people's needs and wants. And then how do we bridge the gap between those? Again, that's the second part of the book. I'll keep you updated with that. I'll have this book finished by the probably in the next couple of days, but probably at least by the next time we talk about the eclipse in Leo. So because I think we're going to really need those skills moving forward. We may not be able to assert our will by dominating others anymore. That just doesn't work ever. But we've seen so many people trying to dominate each other and assert their will through physical, emotional, and intellectual violence. And it really just doesn't work. No, everybody loses when we do that. So how do we start to create win-win situations? By understanding how to ask for what we need, but in a more mature fashion, right? Okay. Amara says, I love Marshall Rosenberg's work. I'll tell you what, Amara, it is changing my life. I every once in a while I'll come across a book that feels extremely important and useful for my everyday life. And this is, it's been a while since I've come across something like that. I've been reading some things that have ignited my passion. I think the last book that really did that was Braiding Sweetgrass. It really changed my perspective on nature and our role within it, and how we relate to spirituality associated with nature and things of that ilk. But this nonviolent communication book, it's so useful in every single part of our lives. And it makes our communication so much more effective. It's not that we're trying to, I think that's what's really resonating with me, is I'm someone who wants to utilize, first of all, I like being a peacemaker, and I like being a bridge between people. And I'm realizing that sometimes the thoughts and feelings and judgments that I may have had as a teacher and as an analyst, as an astrologer, I'm hardwired to make judgments about people and about things, and to get results. As a teacher, we feel pressure to get results for change. And there's been times in the past where if I'm not getting the results that I want through pleasantries, then I revert back to some of maybe the Leo rising parts of myself, where it's just kind of a my way or the highway type of expression, and it just doesn't work. We result to violence, or we result to passive aggression. Like I'm owning all of the follies of my chart, like the Cancer part of me that just sits and pouts in the corner. That's passive aggressive. That's violent also. So, because you're not going to get what you want, you don't get what you need. So learning these skills at any age, right? As a teenager, as a middle-aged person, as an elderly person, as a parent, as a teacher, as a client worker, as a social media personality, all of these things can be useful to help us get more connected with what we need and create win-win situations with other people and help them to get what they need as well. It's not just about getting what we want. That's the narcissistic part. We want everybody to get what they want as much as possible, as long as it is doing no harm, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's the sun in Leo 1. All right. It's in its own domicile. So the sun has a lot of power in this area of the zodiac. It is a place that we are searching for in enlightenment, in the truest form of the word, where we're trying to cast light onto something that had fallen into darkness. We are trying to bring something to our awareness. We are trying to become conscious of things. So the sun is very powerful here. It has the ability to shine that light. It also has some ability for foresight. The Greek myths surrounding Apollo, one of the solar deities, talks about being able to see a great distance into the future. So we might be able to utilize these things to see what's coming around the bend. Let's talk a little bit about the moon in Aquarius. Let's shift gears here. So we've got the moon in Aquarius 1, and we have a very different experience in this decan. Here we see the 5 of Swords, where we have a person that is collecting swords in the foreground. Swords are associated with air and ideas. The wands are associated with fire, okay, and with passion, with spirit fire, things of that nature. Here we're talking about almost an intellectualization of our needs, wants, and desires. This is a card where we see someone potentially smugly collecting swords while two figures go off into the background in defeat, right? This is called the Lord of Conflict and Defeat. Austin Coppock calls it the mark of exile. Oftentimes, this decan shows that there are winners and there are losers, as T. Susie Chang would say in 36 Secrets, where one party is dominating another and the other party is feeling like, I've got to just go off into the fringe. I don't, maybe there was some kind of battle where one person won and the other person was embarrassed, and then they're going off to either learn some new skills or lick some wounds or recover or things of that nature. The themes here, the main themes, it's a Venus-ruled decan in a Saturn-ruled sign. So the themes around Venus is we're talking about having resources that may not be as wealthy as a neighbor. There is the pain of comparison in this decan as well, Schadenfreude, where sometimes we take pleasure in someone else's misfortune. So exclusion, exile, and isolation are themes in this decan. Severity of thought, where we're having thoughts of revenge or thoughts of jealousy or thoughts of Schadenfreude at someone else's pain. We may decide to sacrifice some of our security for freedom, to go off on our own, to not necessarily have to try to please a centralized power that we don't agree with. So that there's going to be conflicts between centrality and people on the fringe with this type of decanic opposition. Okay, we have people in power, we have people that are maybe not in power, and then how do they interact, right? This decan also can represent bizarre aesthetics or eclectic tastes because of the Venusian element to it. They compared the Venusian craftsman in this decan to a coppersmith rather than someone who worked with gold or silver. Often we'll see people turning things that are discarded by other people and turning them into beautiful works of art when they have placements here. I would say that we may not have the resources of the wealthy centralized power, but we can still make something beautiful from what we do have as part of this as well. I was seeing someone was commenting on it was a sports podcast I was listening to, but they said comparison is the enemy of joy. And that really resonated with me because oftentimes we compare the resources we have to others, the amount of attention we can receive on various platforms to others, or our skills or our bodies to others. And that creates just suffering, really. So how do we move out of that cycle of comparison and learn to just appreciate who and what we are and what we have and what we do? So that's part of the Schadenfreude pain of comparison, right? Sometimes when we go through those comparison exercises, if we feel bad about where we are versus someone else, we can take pleasure in seeing them fail or seeing them suffer, right? So and that's really toxic. So how do we get out of that enjoyment of other people's suffering by removing the need to compare our lives with theirs? Because everyone's got a different journey, right? Everyone's got a different role to play. We have different sets of circumstances, and we are learning different things from those circumstances. So questions for reflection with Aquarius I. How can you effectively break away from the herd? How can you go your own way if the group starts to feel like it's not supporting your authentic journey? How can you start to go your own way without a need for validation from a group that may not have the skills to give you that validation? They may not understand how to communicate in a way that will help you to feel like you're getting what you need. I think of the internet and various forms of social media as there are certain corners of the internet that are extremely toxic, and expecting validation from those corners is an exercise in futility. And the more that we start to come to terms with that, the more we can start to find real authentic expression and self-validation rather than external validation. So can you turn your alienation into independence? When you stop caring what people think about you, you're liberated from the weight of their expectations, right? I had to learn this the hard way. As a young Leo North Node rising. I hungered for people's approval. I hungered for the validation of my community. I hungered for the validation of being a musician and being able to express my deeply most cherished emotions and feelings and observations. And it led me sometimes to make some choices and decisions to support that brought me into relationships that didn't actually foster that. It brought me into face to face with the machine that is the music industry. And there are lots of parts of that that are not in alignment with my worldview. And when I stopped trying to impress people and started to express, I found the areas where I felt more comfortable within that. I found this art form, astrology. I found that I am comfortable talking about the philosophical implications in service of others rather than just expressing my own thoughts and desires. I can express my opinions through this work, but I'm doing so in a way that hopefully will help other people as well. And that is really one of the transition points in Leo energy. Liz Green has an amazing book called The Astrology of Fate, and she talks about the myth of Parsifal, an Arthurian legend, if you will. And Parsifal was hidden away, okay, like many heroes, like Zeus, in his early life, and he desired to go off and seek this holy grail, right? And he wanted, when he first went and left home, he was very young and maybe naive, and he came to the castle of the Fisher King, who secretly was his grandfather. So there's these generational traumas that are perpetuated, right? These family curses on some level. Apollo, by the way, is a breaker of family curses, so a little bit of a tie-in there. And he needed to ask a question of the Fisher King, and he failed to ask the question. He kind of went mute. He didn't understand what question to ask, and the whole castle like disappeared, and he had to completely go back home, learn some new skills, go through some more experiences, and truly understand the purpose of his quest. And eventually he goes and he revisits this castle again, and he asks first, what ails thee? So he first is asking of the Fisher King a compassionate question. It is not about his kleos or glory. He is seeking this journey to be of service and to be of a compassionate understanding of other people's needs. So that was the first question. What ails thee, my lord, right? And then he goes on to say, whom does the grail serve? He says, why do we seek this glory? Why do we seek this attention? Why do we seek this divinity? What does it serve? Rather than, I just want to have this for myself. And that's a huge point of growth within the Leo story. So asking yourself, how can I become more compassionate in my search for visibility, validation, etc.? And then what's the purpose of it that is not just a self-centered purpose? And I feel like I went through that journey as a musician who was trying to seek personal glory and then failed at it on some level. There were some successes. You could see the little ego part of me like, it wasn't completely a failure, right? You can see those things like popping in and out. But it didn't go the way that I had envisioned it going. And then re-engaging with a spiritual practice, with a educational self work kind of thing, and then re-emerging, I guess, on some level with the public or with a new persona, asking the question, how can I have compassion for other people's experiences through doing this work? And then whom does this work serve? This isn't about my self-aggrandizement. This is about, how do I do this to be of service to my community? I used to do astrology as a young person as like a party trick. It was a great way to get to know people. It was a great way to say, look at how much I know. Look at how many facts I know about you. Not like, how can I utilize this energy to serve you and to understand how this this information can make your life better. And that is the difference. And this full moon could help us initiate into that process, right? So how can you break away from the herd, turn your alienation into independence? What beauty is to be found in exile? Sometimes we have to go into exile and then return. This is the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell talks about a lot. We have to go off into a quest, and sometimes we feel far away from home, but eventually what we learn, we bring back to our homeland and our communities, right? How can you close the gap between expectations and reality? This is a really important one here. A lot of times the suffering that we have with the pain of comparison is that we want to be a certain place in our life, and we are aware of where we are, and we see where we're not yet. And then we have this gap between this. This is from Ira Glass, talks about the gap between our taste and our hope and our desires and our reality and our skill set. And he talks about closing the gap through experience, through hard work, through practice, right? Through process. Okay. We've lost attachment to process in this time period in human history. We want to go from where we are to instantaneously having different results through things like artificial intelligence, through typing a sentence in to do the work that a musician would have to study for a decade to learn how to do. And people push back against this because there's not a lot of learning in that. Yes, you have maybe this very polished end result, but you didn't go through any of the learning process to get to that result. And that is actually the real beauty that comes out of this. That's where the catharsis comes. We have a decided lack of catharsis in society. And the part of the reason to do art by hand, analog, is so that we can process our feelings. Typing in a sentence and then instantly getting a result does not help us process the same feelings as making our fingers bleed on a guitar. It's very, very different. And it is putting us in a position where our feelings are so bottled up that we can't help but lash out at other people. So we need cathartic, analog art making more now than we ever have in any point in society, in my opinion, because we're starved for it. Okay. Let's see. Devin's here. What's up, Devin? How you doing? It says, definitely working on dealing with being on my own and acceptance of that, right? Yes, it's very difficult. A lot of us are with Saturn in Aries, where we're being almost forced towards independence. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about this Saturn retrograde. There is a theory in Vedic astrology around when a planet is retrograde in either its exaltation or its fall, it tends to act like its opposite sign. So we may get a little bit of a 6-month reprieve from Saturn in Aries, where we may be able to work together with others in ways that haven't been available with Saturn direct in Aries. It's something we should test out. I think it's worthy of exploration. Devin says, my almanac puts me out on an island and it's a lot of work. It's worth it to me, though. It's hard to figure out how to get people to join me in my work. Devin, here is an example of trying to practice nonviolent communication in action. It's a little bit difficult because there's a delay between the chat and our ability to communicate in real time. But if I were to practice the NVC with you on that statement, I would say, just so I'm clear, I'm observing that you are expressing that you're feeling that you are having difficulty coming into alignment with other people. And potentially does that make you feel lonely or unappreciated, right? And asking those clarifying questions and then being open to hearing what the person has said. Like, so I will throw that out to you. Is that making you feel lonely or isolated or right? Like, so this says this puts me on an island and it's a lot of work. Now, Devin's already a good communicator, so he's not going to have the types of inflammatory statements that we might see, where like if he were to state, I'm working so hard and nobody understands me, then we make hyperboles, right? We are saying things in an exaggerated way that don't allow us to get more clarity. So one of the things that we could say is, how do we connect Devin with what he needs, which is, I think, if I'm making an assumption here, because we don't have real time back and forth, it's a little hard to do in this format, so I apologize for that. So if I'm putting words in your mouth, Devin, please put clarification in the chat. I'm hearing that there is a ability to ask for what he needs. So maybe, Devin, I'm going to throw this out to you. Have you been able to ask people to join you in your work? And have you asked directly? And have you asked as a request, or have you made a demand? Because that's the part that I'm really struggling with, right? Devin says, yeah, I talk more in metaphors that show my feelings sometimes, but usually do my best not to cast blame. Right. And metaphorical talking is okay, but it is an indirect way of communicating. Sometimes I'll talk in metaphor, and what I really need to do is ask someone, are they able to help me meet my needs? And if they aren't, I have to be, the request part of it is being okay with their no, right? When we ask for something that we need, and then we start to either become passive aggressive or we lash out because we're not getting what we need, that's a demand. That's violence. And I recognize that in myself. Like when I don't get what I want as a former only child, Leo rising, I can feel the anger and the desire to dominate the other person come up in my mind. I don't take no very well. And this is helping me more in the emotional intelligence realm understand that that doesn't help you get any closer to what you want, because when you start to make demands with other people, that raises their resistance, right? Because they're not getting their needs met, and all we're doing is just getting further and further apart. So how do we start to communicate in ways where we express our needs, allow other people the space to meet those needs without being coerced into doing it, and then everybody is hopefully getting closer and closer and closer to what they want with a number of back and forth clarifying statements. Karen is here. What's up, Karen? How you doing? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well. Sorry, Karen, that LeBron James did not choose Cleveland today. For those of you who are just tuning in, LeBron is going to Philadelphia. Kind of a surprise. After I kind of thought he was either going to Miami or Cleveland, but he's going to be a Philadelphia 76er. And Karen's a Cleveland native, so I don't know if there's any mourning with that or if you guys are over the LeBron experience, but I'm glad that you're here today, and I'm just kind of trying to lighten the mood, friend. And I hope everything's going well with your Third Coast Mojo stuff. So Karen, you got a really nice little thing from Third Coast Mojo, and hope it's serving you well, my friend. Okay, so I feel like we've taken a good look at Aquarius I. All right. Let me see here. Let's keep going. What do you say? What's next? Let's talk about the host. Let's talk about the host. Before we get into the host, we're getting close to the hour mark here, right? So let's take a little break. Okay. Kate's here, says, submit to my subliminal collaboration requests. Exactly. Right? Subliminal. Yeah. And it's sometimes I'll work with clients a lot, and they want something from either their partners or from their communities. And I'm like, well, have you asked for it? And they're like, well, no. It's like, well, your partner's not a mind reader, and your community is not a mind reader. You have to be able to ask for what you want. And it has to truly be a request rather than a demand, because a lot of times we will cloak a demand in a request, and that actually backfires because people will push back on us. Devin says, definitely don't make demands of people. Just need to continue moving forward with the project. I had to break through with appreciating my own efforts this morning. Well, there you go. Good. Yeah. I mean, sometimes we have to let things cook in the background, right? Sometimes there's something that only we can carry the passion for, right? And the key with that, Devin, is not to take it personally if other people aren't able to hop on board. A lot of times what we're trying to get clear on is that everyone's got pressure and demands on them and priorities. And a lot of times when people are not joining or jumping onto the ship, it's not because you don't have a good idea. It's because they're just overwhelmed. Like this is sometimes something I realize about myself. Sometimes people ask me for help in various ways, and I have to say no because I just don't have any more bandwidth. Like I'm just overwhelmed with certain things in my life, and I get that response from other people too. If I'm asking them for help and they're overwhelmed, and I'm learning not to take it personally, because that's where the compassion comes in. That's where we're asking, what ails thee, my Lord, right? Or we're understanding that we're all having to meet challenges within our life, and that helps us to not take those rejections, those pushbacks, right? The inability to give us what we need in that moment, the way that we need it in that moment, we take it less personally, and that allows us to feel less violent about it. All right. Karen says, well, thanks for breaking the news. I just heard it now. LeBron loves playing with our emotions. Have fun, Philly. Oh, I'm loving my custom oil. I'm glad to hear that you're loving the custom oil, friend. Appreciate that. And my personal opinion on LeBron James, first of all, when we talk about nonviolent communication, the fan base of Philadelphia would greatly benefit from reading that book, from my experience in the past. Now, if any of you are Philly fans, I mean, it might be something to work on. But LeBron also really likes attention, and it looks like he's just chasing a ring. He took a really cheap contract to team up with some other people, and hey, I guess that's his prerogative. I guess Cleveland, if I were you, don't take it personally. He has his own agenda, and it's probably not because he doesn't love the city of Cleveland. It's probably just because he's more concerned about his legacy, because he suffers from the pain of comparison to one Michael Jordan. And honestly, it doesn't matter what he does in the next couple of years. He probably won't necessarily be able to overtake the legacy of Michael Jordan. That's my personal opinion. But this isn't the forum to have the Jordan versus LeBron debate, but it is a fun one. Okay. Kate says, I just like the sound of my lady and my lord. There you go. All right. So I said I was going to take a stretch break. So let's do that. While we're stretching, do me a huge favor, friends. Please go and like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here and you want to know when we're going live. Stretch your hips out and get a drink of water. If you would like to contribute to what I'm doing here in the astrosphere, I guess you could say, super chats and buy me coffees are very helpful. I am learning that I need to express my need for material security, and right now I could use some support. So if you're able to do that, that would be greatly appreciated. If you can't, I understand. Everyone's got responsibilities, but I'm working on being more direct with what I need. So this is just working through this in real time. The easiest thing you can do, though, is the engagement. Doing everyone here today who is commenting and liking the video, that does really help, and it helps get the word out, and that is very valuable. Okay, let's talk about Saturn and Aries 2. Let's go back up here. Now, this is interesting because Saturn, as of this full moon, will have stationed retrograde. And it isn't quite retrograde. It is stationing as we speak on Friday, the 24th. It will be stationing on the 26th, which is Sunday. So it's slowing way down to a snail's pace. So any of you who are Saturn influenced, if you have a lot of Capricorn or Aquarius placements, if you have an area of life like Aries where you feel like things have crawled to a snail's pace, it might be due to or reflected in the symbol of Saturn retrograding. And I think that this is a point where we are, first of all, in the public discussion, a lot of people got very upset about this particular Mercury retrograde cycle recently. They were like, we all got Mercury retrograded. They're like, Mercury's in the blender, or whatever the kids are saying these days. First of all, Mercury stations retrograde 3 times a year for a couple weeks at a time. It's not an uncommon thing. It's not always violent, all right? But This particular Mercury retrograde that we just came out of, because Mercury just stationed direct yesterday. First of all, just a really interesting astrological aside, piggybacking off of the LeBron James thing. LeBron James is a Gemini rising. He's been holding the league and everyone else basically hostage with his decision of where he's going to play throughout the entire retrograde cycle. And just as Mercury stations direct and is coming out from under the beams, lo and behold, he's made a choice, right? And Gemini is his rising sign. So I thought that was like, oh, that's astrology in action. But this Mercury retrograde may have felt a little bit more hazardous because of the fact that Mercury is hosting Mars and subsequently Uranus. We had a Mars-Uranus conjunction within this Mercury cycle, okay? And we could be reviewing the way that we argue with one another or disagree verbally on our cherished ideals. So you see how I've seen a lot of people in my sphere starting to reevaluate the way that they express themselves verbally and through their ideas. And because of the fact of fallout from like conflicts, okay? And to me, that's why this is important to me. How do I model this how do I utilize this myself, but also model this for people in my life or my community and things of that nature? And the other thing that Marshall Rosenberg says in this book is, how do we start focusing on the behaviors and the results that we want rather than what we don't want? I think that's really powerful because we are so quick to judgment on the internet of calling out the things that we don't want. And we are not as good at articulating what we do want to happen. And I tend to, I think it's okay to identify an observation without judgment of something that we might not want. Like if we, like, for example, on this channel, here's an example of this. And I think this is important because Saturn in Aries is helping us to articulate our values, okay? Our values. And with this retrograde, this was a circular way of saying that Mercury stations retrograde 3 times a year. Saturn actually retrogrades for about half of the year. So if you were really afraid of Mercury retrograde and you had a negative experience with it this year because of its hosting of Mars, this retrograde of Saturn, unfortunately, is also hosted by Mars, okay? And it is related to Mars. It's a little bit different, though, because Saturn isn't the one hosting the retrograde planet. It is the retrograde planet itself, okay? So there's a little bit of a difference there. But with this, oh man, I really thought my brain, I really twisted my brain into circles with that one in retrograde fashion. I had some points around it and I just completely lost my train of thought with it. So Mercury is hosting Mars in the retrograde. So we are reviewing our communication through conflict of our ideas. When Saturn is retrograding in Aries, we're starting to review our values so that we can communicate those values more effectively. I was going to go down the path of how on this channel in the past we may have made statements that were judgments rather than observations. And this is something that I'm going to try to work on. It's not natural for me. For me, I get really passionate about something and I've just been used to stating something very fiery, I guess you could say. Even though I attempt to be kind and peaceful, I'm an intense person. And one of the things we criticize on this channel is systemic wealth inequality. And one example of this could be stating these billionaires are assholes and they're greedy, stupid fucks. And see what I mean? That's judgment. Now, the observation could be that the wealth gap in America and in the world is increasing. There are communities that are not receiving what they need, while other communities or small handfuls of people are receiving more than they might need to get their basic needs met. Do you see the difference in those two statements? And that's how we call out and then subsequently call in and say, what I would like to see is I would like to see the wealth gap close. I would like to see people who don't have what they need get more of what they need. And I would like to see the excesses of a certain handful of people stop hurting people. Okay, right? I would like to see them that become more into balance. You know, you could also state many of the policies that we see publicly are how do we objectify this? Because this is something this is hard. This is really difficult to do in real time because there's things that really make me upset about a lot of these things. There are laws that are being dismantled that used to protect environmental spaces. Okay. If we said that in the violent way, we would say the Republicans are just destroying everything on the planet. Like, right? And that casts blame and aspersion. But the objective observation, laws are being dismantled that used to protect shared public spaces. And the people that are benefiting from that are benefiting through profit. Okay. So that allows us to say that, and that makes me feel very sad and angry, right? So you make the observation. Okay. I'm teaching you in this moment, I hope, how to review Saturn values in a way that can actually bring us closer to what we want and to be able to articulate our feelings through our observations and then state a need and a desire. So if we did this by observing that laws are being dismantled that used to protect the environment, I feel angry and sad because I love animals and trees. Hence, I would like to see protections restored to those spaces. And that allows us to get further on. And then we can take the actions of how do we get to the point where we start restoring protections on public spaces and natural spaces. And you start going through that motion. But do you see how when we state it that way, it hopefully can reduce resistance? Now, the capitalist could say, well, I desire to make money. You're like, well, how do we meet halfway with this? Can we meet halfway with this? That's the second part of the book. So I'll read it and I'll get back to you. But first, learning how to state our own desires, I think, is very important. Let's see. Devin says 3.14 times a year, pi times. What is that in relationship to? Non sequitur that I missed. Maybe I missed something. The new way to disagree is you just add respectfully after anything you say. Yeah, that is still violent. If you are making a demand and a judgment and you just say respectfully, that's just patronizing, right? And so how do we move forward in a way that is actually just making a non-judgmental observation and then stating how it makes us feel? What this is all about is taking responsible for our own feelings. When we say you did this and you made me feel that way, that's not taking emotional responsibility. If you say I observe this action or behavior happening and I feel these emotions in response to it, you are owning the feeling. And that really helps you to move forward in a way where you could start owning that feeling and getting clear as to what you want in response to that feeling. Devin says, in response to the wealth gap, you're moving from language that is reacting to the thing that was caused by actions in the past, whereas the second attempt is moving you towards how you would like things to be in the future. By moving your language into the future tense, let's see. Let me understand that. Wealth gap. This is hard to do in real time with the chat, so I apologize if it's clunky. Wealth gap. You are moving from language that is reacting to the thing that was caused by actions in the past, whereas in the second attempt, you're moving towards how you'd like things to be in the future by moving your language to the future tense. It seems to me that people are still not paying attention to the problems current politics are creating. Is is that a criticism of the method? I guess I'm asking for more clarity. Do you feel that that is an ineffective way of getting what you desire out of change? So I guess that's my question. Devin says, I find this process frustrating. I'd like to see a greater awareness and compassion being brought. Okay. I share that frustration, Devin, with the how do we enact change brought into the sphere. I find this process frustrating. I'd like to see greater awareness and compassion being brought into the sphere. Right, but see what you did there is you own that feeling. You own the feeling of frustration when we're trying to work on a macrocosm issue. Do you see the difference though between like pointing the finger and owning the feeling? This is not a validation of what we perceive as the negative behaviors. It's the furthest from that. We can make observations on. Not everybody has to agree with our observations, but that is a part. Yeah. So you were demonstrating the same process. There you go. I love it. You're a quick study. Let's all do it. We should do a nonviolent communication Marshall Rosenberg book club. That would actually be really fun. It's like nonviolent communication for astrologers or for metaphysical practitioners. I think it would actually be really helpful. Okay, so back to Saturn. And I would like to be able to get into that particular issue more at length. What I'm feeling is a time pressure to get through the rest of my material. So that is, so I'm going to try to keep moving forward with that. Devin says, of moving from the issue that is the problem, how I feel about the problem, how would you like see things be? Yeah. Mercury retrograde is 3.14 times a year, pi time. Oh, there you go. I love it. Amara says, the great thing about nonviolent communication is that it focuses on people's needs rather than on the strategy. We all have needs that we can try to be more compassionate about. We are in agreement with that statement, 100%. And again, it is not natural for some of us to even think in this way. Like I felt myself hearing my inner dialogue come up when I disagreed with what someone said the other day, like with something my partner said. And in my brain, I made a really strong judgment about it. And I said it out loud in jest because like, my brain says this, Tanya, like, this is how hard this is. And like, she still expressed that it was hurtful that I verbalized it, but hopefully, she has compassion for me, that we're trying to work through. Even just, I expressed to her that I feel like I'm just completely trying to rewire my brain. I did not say that to hurt you. I said that because I'm noticing and observing my own thoughts that are coming up, that are violent thoughts. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean violence as like physical violence, but as judgment, right? My brain is constantly judging at all times. And it's actually very exhausting. I would also think that a lot of our judgmental tendencies are because we don't have a need being met for safety, right? I think for those of us who experienced trauma in the past, we constantly have to be judging whether someone is safe or not. And if we aren't feeling safety, we're feeling scared, right? We're feeling scared, we're feeling angry, we're feeling upset, we're feeling like we want to either engage or disengage, depending on what would get us to that feeling of safety. And yeah, it can be hardwired as a habit. So when we're practicing something like this, we're trying to create a new neural pathway and a new habit, and it takes time. This is why we're going to make mistakes with this. That's why I even hesitated talking about it today, but I think it's so important. When I feel passionate about something, I really want to share it. But I may be even butchering I'm making some mistakes and falling into some of the old traps because of an incomplete understanding currently of the technique. So please, I guess what I would request from people is grace with that thus far. Devin says, violence, the conscious or unconscious attention to bend something else to our will without consent. Ooh, I love that. I love that definition. And yes, that is exactly what this is all about. Trying to bend other people's will, like whether they are acquiescing or agreeing to it or not. And that's created all sorts of conflicts in the world. I mean, to me, this is, as someone who is extremely interested in bridging the gaps between people and being a mediator. This is a game changer. Okay, so Saturn is going to be conjoining a fixed star Alpheretz. And Alpheretz is a fixed star related to speed, okay, doing something very quickly. It's also related to Andromeda, a princess that was in distress constellation. So we may also be re-examining, first of all, how maybe we engage with something with a lack of patience through rushing through something. Maybe this is slowing something down for us. We could also be re-engaging with how we perpetuate the cycle of aggressor and victim. I think that there is a victim consciousness baked into that fixed star story, where we're dealing with how do we move through and heal through the cycle of trauma and abuse without getting stuck in identifying with it. And I know I'm not articulating that as gracefully as I would like to, but this is bringing up a story that I'm reading about in Persephone's Revolution that I talked about last week, where Persephone became the victim of an abduction, and she was abducted into the underworld. She was coerced to do something against her will without consent. She experienced violence, the conscious or unconscious attention to bend something to our will without consent. As Devin put in the chat here, which was very, very helpful. And eventually Persephone became empowered. She became the queen of the underworld. She started to become the person that was giving consent to the actions around her. She became a leader. She became a figure that was wielding her own will and moved past the disempowered position. And I think that is really what we're going to be exploring with Saturn on Alpheretz, is how do we move beyond the disempowerment of being coerced into something violently against our will, okay? And then how do we start to empower ourselves again through our communication skills, through our ability to learn new ways of relating to other people? Remember, Saturn in Aries retrograde, there are theories that think that it's acting as Saturn in Libra, or more in alignment with Saturn in Libra tendencies, which forces us or binds us, I don't know if forces is the right word, but binds us to seeing other people's perspective and to finding win-win situations and negotiating with others rather than bulldozing them like Aries can do with its excessive yang energies at times. Okay, so really interesting stuff. Karen says, yes, so true. Fear and anger are two sides of the same coin. This is another thing that I'm enjoying about my exploration with this book. It's helping me to identify emotions that could express or be cloaked as one thing, but are actually trying to express another thing. Oftentimes when we get really angry and we lash out at people, it's because we're scared. Sometimes it's because we're sad. Sometimes it's because we're frustrated. It's giving us new language to be able to express what we're actually feeling so that we can get our needs met. Sometimes when we bring a problem to a friend, and this has been a problem for me because I have people that bring me problems all the time. And I love it. I love helping. I love helping. I love fixing things. That is the issue. There are times when friends or partners or family members will bring me something that they're struggling with, and they will get upset with me because I will instantly offer what I view as a solution. And I'm just trained to do that. People pay me good money to offer them a solution and try to, quote unquote, fix the problem. Now, I can't fix a problem for somebody. That is hubris. But I can help guide them to their own process so that they can have the awareness of how they can go about fixing the problem for themselves. So let's just clear that up first. But I'm realizing that sometimes when people bring you some of these things, what they're actually looking for is to feel heard and validated. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's tough in client work too, because sometimes a client wants to hear heard and validated and doesn't want a tangible solution. Other times, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for tangible solutions. So when we clarify those two things, it can help people get what they need versus almost wasting time not getting what everybody needs within the situation. So let's keep going. So that's Saturn in Aries. Saturn is going to be retrograde in Aries from the 26th of July until December the 10th. So it stations direct at about 7 degrees of Aries, which is very close to that active degree that we saw that was activating a number of world leaders' charts. It was squaring Mercury in Trump's chart. It was squaring Hegseth's Mercury. It was right on Epstein's moon. So a lot of the things that could be something that is reviewing. We talked about this earlier with Saturn's cycle, that this point could be reviewing some things with those particular leaders that could be playing out for the next 6 months as well. All right. So let's do this. Let's take you through sort of the unfolding of this over time. So we're going to have 2 charts. It's a bi-wheel. So we have the transits on the outside. We have the full moon in Aquarius I on the inside. All right. So I'm going to take you to the couple days leading up to this, because if we don't have context, we're going to miss some things. So Saturn stations retrograde on the 26th, which is Sunday. A reviewing process, a slowing down, going back and reviewing how we express our values and how do we do that allows space for other people to express their values. Do you see what we're doing there? It's very easy to say, I believe this, and if you don't agree with me, fuck you, right? That doesn't allow space for people to support your values, because they might instantly put up a wall, rebel against those values just in an effort to humble you, right? And it doesn't help you get what you wanted. It is the language of oppressive, I mean, really, honestly, the oppressive patriarchal type of language. We have a lot of criticism lately of the patriarchy. And some of that is just through this violent way of communicating, this desire to dominate and this desire to coerce people into what they're doing rather than be a co-creator with them. So how do we dismantle some of those systems through this as well? Okay. The North Node also moves into Aquarius on that day. So let's go back. Sorry, this is not what I'm showing you on the screen. Let's go back to the 26th. So you can see here, Saturn stationing retrograde. We have the North Node moving into Aquarius that day. Okay. And the South Node moving into Leo. Again, an important moment for stepping down off of a throne of power. This eclipse is going to activate that energy very powerfully with the South Node moving into Leo 3. There will be, most likely, some leaders or multiple leadership stepping down off of their throne. Okay, whatever that means. Could be, could be the president of the United States. It could be his whole cabinet. It could be despotic leaders of some other country. There is many possibilities for that. And it's going to play out over, it's not going to happen just like instantaneously. It may happen over the next 6 months. It may happen over the next, synodic cycle. What is the word I was looking for? There's a longer cycle of eclipses where that is happening as well. It starts with an S, but it's escaping me at the moment. What is increasing with the North Node in Aquarius 3? The ability to unravel old karmic knots. So Aquarius 3 shows a figure that is gathering up 5 swords, leaving 2 swords behind and sneaking away from an encampment, going off into the unknown. And it might be a result of what we saw and experienced in the first decan of Aquarius. If we go back to our Aquarius decans, you've got the conflict and the defeat, the desire to go off into exile, maybe even intentionally. And then we have the ferrying across the waters in a liminal space from one shore to another, one reality to another. Okay. And in this decan of Aquarius, we've kind of gone back to the old circumstance, revisited it to be able to learn something and take some wisdom with us, and then actually go into the new experience without necessarily without looking back. Although this person is looking back, we have to look back first and then go off into the unknown. A lot of people that I've worked with client-wise that have placements in this decan experience a lot of frustration because there is a circumstance in their life that they're tied to that they really would benefit from leaving. And many years ago, I had a client who had Mars in this decan in the third house, and they had an abusive sibling. And they were kept trying to interact with the sibling because they felt some responsibility and some old ties with the sibling. But eventually my advice to them was, Mars is actually asking you to sever and separate this relationship. This is one that might not be salvageable. And if you are able to revisit your frustration but actually leave this relationship behind, you might find a sense of relief. And eventually they did. And that was their the experience they shared with me. They had a lot more relief because that relationship just was not one that was going to work in the form that it was in. So there may be a situation in our life in the Aquarius area of our chart where we do need to learn about something that's bringing us frustration and then learn how to start unraveling the knot so that we can move forward into the future. We may also need to learn how to step away from a conflict, to step down off of the defending of our longly cherished beliefs. This, I think, is really important, especially because, you know, if we have circumstances that aren't bringing us what we want, and if our skill set and our behaviors aren't leading to the results that we're looking for, continuing to defend those beliefs and doubling down on it is a Sisyphean task. It's something that is ineffective. So if we want to be effective in our lives, sometimes we have to step away from situations, get some space and some distance and some objectivity, maybe to learn something or to bring something to awareness. And then we can go on with our lives in a way that is, I don't know, less stressful, creating less suffering for ourselves and others. So this is, I think, a really important moment for learning when to say, this is enough. I need to go. This is knowing when to quit. Right? There are situations when there's no shame in quitting. We have this glamorization of fighting at all costs. You know what I mean? Just dig deep, which is a Leo 3 energy, but that may not work. We have to have some objectivity. There's situations where that can be just perpetuating a cycle of violence with one another. Sorrow cycle. Yes, Karen, thank you. Thank you. That was on the tip of my brain and I couldn't pull it up, but thank you. Appreciate that. Kate says Zendaya has Saturn retrograde at 5 degrees Aries. Well, let's keep an eye on what's going on with Zendaya, especially around December. She's in the Odyssey movie? Question mark. I don't remember. She was in something recently, so maybe there's something that is involved with her potentially going forward. The 27th, we have the Sun making its opposition to Pluto. So this Pluto part, we didn't really evaluate as closely when we were doing the full moon, but the Pluto part here, I mean, Pluto is a planet that talks about and reflects on coercive power, right? A lot of the mythological themes are around that story of abduction. It is a lord of the underworld. Hades is the lord of the underworld. It speaks to destruction and death and things that are hidden that need to be reformed or need to be healed. It is I have experienced Pluto as the revealer of that which has been repressed, right? It's almost like a shadow energy planet. It says, when I'm moving through this, I'm going to reveal unequitable power structures, and I'm going to reveal corruption that needs to be fixed or healed or worked with. And what we're seeing with Pluto and Aquarius is it also speaks towards things that we might fear. And with Pluto and Aquarius, a lot of us have a very, I think, justifiable fear around technology, around surveillance, around censorship, around feeling exiled and not being in the central in crowd, I guess you could say. We could think about this also in relationship to the wealth gap that we're experiencing. The quote unquote in crowd, the solar folks right now, are the wealthy billionaire 1% class, I guess you could say. Everyone else is Pluto and Aquarius on some level. We're seeing Pluto and Aquarius manifest as like fear of technology, fear of the data centers and its impact on the planet and on the health of the planet and of our communities. So all of these things are going to be, I think, baked in to not only the full moon, but this solar opposition, where oftentimes when we have Sun-Pluto oppositions, there is a revelation, the sun shining its light on this corruption. So the sun often represents centralized leadership, the king in the past, you know, and the Pluto is going to be getting a big spotlight on it. We may see the interaction of both the public and the leadership. Okay. We can also see the dangers of mass groupthink, I guess you could say, the homogenization thinking. A lot of the criticism of artificial intelligence is the homogenization of our individuality due to just throwing like thousands of years of art into the wood chipper and then farting out the lowest common denominator, right? The middle ground, the Starbucks of art all the time, I guess you could say. I don't know. It just feels like we're taking what makes us unique, we're sanding it down to something quote unquote socially acceptable, so that eventually, if we keep that sanding going, everything's going to be the same. Everything is going to be homogenized. So there's this fear of homogenization that comes through Pluto too. So this Sun-Pluto opposition, we could be feeling fear of conformity, right? Fear of our attention and standing out and our visibility coming into alignment with a community that wants to sand us down and sand our hard edges down so that it doesn't feel threatening. Our individuality doesn't feel threatening to them. This is really baked into the tenets of like white supremacy and fascism. They're trying to sand down any diversity. They're trying to sand down anything that's different so that they don't feel threatened by it, right? And a lot of it is just due to not understanding other people, a lack of communication, a lack of understanding, a lack of appreciation. A lot of times where people will get into racist arguments or conversations is because they've just never had an experience of one another. They don't understand or validate each other's humanity. So we may be seeing issues like that coming up with the Sun-Pluto opposition on the 27th. Now, this is also building towards the Venus-Mars square that is beginning to activate during the full moon. All right, but it perfects on the 29th. All right, so here's the 29th, and here is Mars at 21 degrees of Gemini and Venus at 21 degrees of Virgo. Okay, and Mars is in the overcoming square. And Mars in Gemini 3 is utilizing. So Mars, I think Mars or any planet will use the resources of the decan that it's moving through to attempt to achieve its own agenda. Okay. Tanya's here. What's up, Tanya? Says Zendaya is in the latest Spider-Man film with Tom Holland, recently revealed as her husband after their secret wedding. He is also in the Odyssey as Telemachus. Okay, there you go. This is Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo. Welcome, friend. This is so maybe there's something that is revealed about their marriage or something like going on within that potentially. I don't know. We'll have to see. She's definitely in the news, as is he. Complicate says, down with homogeny. Yeah, as a fellow Leo rising, I bristle at the idea of toxic homogeny. I do think that there's some cases where homogeny is not necessarily the enemy. I had to think about how to communicate it clearly. I think on some level, the homogenization of Aquarius could be better served with people taking unified actions to preserve life on the planet. Does that make sense? If homogeny is taking away personal will, ability to exert our personal will and desires and our individuality, then yes, it might feel negative. At the same time, if I'm seeing this from both sides, because every sign has positive and negative things, if I see homogeny in the lens of positivity, how can we make choices that are in service of collective goals that are positive rather than collective goals that are negative? If the collective goal is to never have any diversity, that's negative, right? That is oppressive and toxic. If the collective goal is to be more energy efficient so that we can preserve life for our species and other species on the planet, then that cooperation and that homogenization of action, that alignment of action, could be a positive thing. So I think that we have to be careful with our words with that too. This is something I'm just realizing, that we can see things from multiple perspectives. And what I'm hearing though, Kate, is that, and you can tell me if I'm on the right path or not, is that you're reacting to the type of homogeny that eliminates individuality and individual will. Would that be correct? Right? All right. You can confirm or deny in the chat. Again, there's a 20-second delay from when I say something to when people respond. So it's a little, sometimes it could be a little awkward doing these clarifying types of discussions on a live stream. Kate says, I looked at her chart this morning and we see where Pallas Athena is because her role is Athena. Ooh, that's cool. Where is it? Let me know. That would be neat. Tony says, just popping in with some weird celebrity facts. I love it. Well, I'm here for it. Yeah, we got some people greeting you in the chat here. Kate says, he's being good, Tanya, I promise. I'm trying my best. I got to tell you, friends, as someone who has strong feelings and strong opinions and a Virgo stellium, communicating in a non-judgmental way takes a lot of extra effort. And it is very taxing on my nervous system. If I'm full disclosure, I am exhausted this week because I've been trying to practice this, trying to regulate what comes out of my mouth and actually even how I think about things. And it is very taxing on the body. So I'm doing my best, and I'm glad that you all are here for it. And I feel fairly supported within this. So thanks for your patience. Okay, so that Venus-Mars square in the third decan of Gemini, the third decan of Gemini has it has a relationship with black and white thinking, really, like we've been talking about today. There are some Decanic literature that talks about seeing things in high contrast because of its co-rulership of Saturn and the Sun. Sun in the descending Chaldean order, Saturn in the triplicity method. It also brings us to an inflection point where we can't necessarily keep two options alive. And what Mars desires is to sever and separate. It is also the tools that we utilize within conflict. So if Mars is in Gemini 3, the tools that it might be utilizing are polarizing black and white types of ultimatum-like thinking. So I think that this is an even more important time to practice our nonviolent communication because it's going to be very easy to make polarizing statements. So what does Mars want to do there, though? If we give Mars a job here, Mars is trying to eliminate too many thoughts, too many discussions, too many arguments. It may be trying to eliminate black and white thinking. This may be a way to give Mars a job and say, I'm going to eliminate my tendency to make ultimatums with myself and others by leaning into Mars's energy of severing and separating. So I'm a firm believer in giving a planet a job to do that is reflective of the place that it is in, right? There's a range of possibilities. When we go through with ignorance, we can manifest some of the more difficult to experience manifestations. But if we go in with foresight, we can actually just give it the job that it wants to do that could be a more positive manifestation of that. Now, what about Venus in Virgo 3? Kate says, I will neither confirm or deny my alliances. I'll just say that I drink homogeneous milk and I've had enough. Fair enough, friend. Fair enough. Tanya says, thanks for keeping an eye on me. Oh, everybody's keeping an eye on me. All right, appreciate it. Love to everyone having back to magical tasks. Tanya's been working hard on Third Coast Mojo, so go support her over on Etsy. Sign up for her newsletter too. You can go to thirdcoastmojo.com, I think, and sign up for that newsletter if you want to keep in touch with an even more detailed description of what's coming out on Third Coast Mojo. Thank you, Tanya. So what is Venus doing in this relationship? Venus is nearing its maximum degree of fall, its lowest point. It's like at the bottom of the well. Venus desires harmony. Venus desires bringing things together. Virgo 3 is very good at separating things out into categories. And when we have a Venus-Mars square with Mars in the overcoming position, our tendency to make black and white judgments could be putting even more pressure on a Venus that is already having difficulty bringing things together. So the tension between ultimatum-like statements and Venus's tendency to utilize separating things out into category brings us into like making black and white bold statements about different categories of people or putting people into a category unnecessarily, right? Just like we fear homogenization, we should also fear or try to work to alleviate being put into a box or a category that doesn't suit us or that isn't appropriate. When we make generalizations about people, when we don't get to know the individual, that's another form of homogenistic violence, right? When we say that this whole group of people does this, or this whole group of people does that, that is exactly the type of judgment that we're learning new skills to try to avoid. So the other thing that I would recommend about Venus in Virgo 3 is that decan is related to entropy and preservation. Those are two opposite things. Preservation of things against the ravages of time and the entropy that causes them to return to the earth. When Venus is here, we may be tempted to take actions to preserve something against the ravages of time that may or may not work. Most of the time, not. I remember specifically, this is a story I've told in the past, but specifically when I had some anxiety about my thinning hair, and it's not that bad, but in my younger days, I had a lot of anxiety about it, and I started making this oil that was made from saw palmetto oil and turmeric. So if you know anything about turmeric, it stains really, really intensely yellow. And I would put this on my head once, and I had like this cap, and my hands were like yellow for like a week after doing it once. And it was recommended to do this every day for like an hour. And I was like, Venus was in Virgo 3. And it was me trying to hang on and harmonize something that may not be able to be controlled in the way that I had desired. And the sacrifices would have been too great to do that. I was not willing to stain my hands and everything around me and my clothes turmeric yellow because I was afraid my hair was thinning. And this might be something, this is an example to be like, how do we come to terms with that which needs to be returned to the earth rather than continuing to defiantly defend a position or a trying to get angry about it rather than accepting it as part of the cycle of life. So that's something to keep in mind with the energy of those two decans squaring off with one another, right? The tendency to make ultimatums, violent communication in service of preserving something that really might not be preservable. So let's say, for example, we see this with an opposition with Pluto. Here is one example of a range of possibilities. This is the storyteller in me from an admitted subjective perspective. Let's say the leader of the United States shows through his actions during this Pluto opposition and subsequent eclipse, I guess you could say, that's coming up, that he is no longer fit for office. We've already seen this not just through the president, but through like the whole Mitch McConnell situation. This to me is reflective of that. This is like, this guy potentially could or could not be even alive right now. And there are people that are trying to keep him in power, even though he may not be capable of doing his job anymore. So the rhetoric could get much louder around that, especially if it's shown that these aging politicians aren't able to carry on their duties and responsibilities, and how the conflict between that, so I think that there's going to be some intense discussions about that, especially because there is what feels to me like a lack of transparency around some of these things and issues. Natalia says it makes sense that Leo would want his mane intact. Yes. Yes. Natalia, you hit the nail on the head. Like as a Leo ascendant, I had identified with my mane. I had long hair for many years. And, one of the concessions that I have made is that wearing your hair long sort of exacerbates the appearance of thinning. And I've since kept my hair a lot shorter, and it just works better for me. But yes, learning that just as the clothes do not make the man, the hair does not make the man either. And as I get further and further along of not identifying as much with my physical body as a spirit soul, I'm more comfortable with just the changes that are going on. And we all have our different processes with that, right? And we all have different pressures in society. It's like there's a lot of pressure on women especially to maintain a youthful appearance. I happen to be somewhat fortunate that I have a genetic inheritance of looking somewhat young into my middle age. I mean, my mom looked very, very young for a number of years. And I don't know, but that is the one thing that sometimes when you have the appearance of aging that you can't hide, you have to come to terms with the fact that you're aging. And this is a systemic issue as well. This is something that if we would learn to appreciate every stage of life rather than just glamorize and glorify youth, I think this would not be as much of an issue. So something to consider. Okay, so that's the Mars square. The same day, Jupiter is Cazimi. This is the conjunction, the actual conjunction. We have Jupiter really close during the full moon. Actually, no, never mind. That is the full moon. So these things that I forgot that I was leading up to the full moon. So we have the Saturn retrograde, the node shifting, the opposition to Pluto, which also a trine to Neptune and Uranus, a sextile to Uranus, and the Venus-Mars square happening the same day as the full moon, and also the Jupiter-Cazimi happening the same day as the full moon. I want to make sure that that's clear. The Jupiter-Cazimi, I think we've engaged with this a little bit, but just to review, this is Jupiter, a planet associated with, this is maybe something you might not hear quite often with Jupiter, but in a traditional sense, Jupiter had associations with bringing order and harmony and peace to situations. While Mercury separates things out into categories and creates doubt and creates uncertainty, Jupiter is trying to bring things together to achieve a goal, to be able to bring all of the elements together to move forward. And you could see that with Sagittarius, right? With the arrow being able to be shot towards a target to hit the mark, right? In Pisces, Pisces is very much related to the Odysseus myth. So if you go see the Odysseus film, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking forward to going. Think about Pisces archetypes when you're looking at that film, because there is a siren's call of trying to get home, right? Return back to a spiritual reality, or return a siren song back to return to a place of home, but maybe going on a wandering journey to get there. So Jupiter Cazimi could be bringing awareness and insight into the way that we show up and the roles that we play. Okay. And this could also be leading to a new belief system around our role and what we are trying to utilize our spotlight for. So not only are we having this full moon in this opposition with Pluto, but we may be getting some really important insight as to what new role we can take on. Sometimes it could be through confronting some uncomfortable feelings in relationship to the group, the collective. It could be feeling like, well, this role that I've been playing does not feel safe anymore, or doesn't feel like an authentic expression of who I am and what the moment needs. I think that's really important. Oftentimes we're afraid to change because we identify very strongly with the past version of ourselves, and we don't want to invalidate the past version of ourselves. When we change and we take on a new role, it does not have to mean that the old role was wrong. It means that the old role was appropriate potentially for that time and for that need that we were trying to meet. I don't regret being a professional musician. That was feeding into a need for me to express myself in that manner. The role I'm playing now is different, and it is meeting a different need within me. And we don't make the old self wrong to change into a new self. And I think a lot of people get stuck in the old self because they're afraid to say that is no longer appropriate for the current situation. And that makes them feel like they failed. It's not a failure to change. Sometimes it's actually the greatest success possible to change into your new role, your new identity, because you're meeting the current moment. You're actually being present. And I think this Jupiter Cazimi is going to help us to learn how to be present. Okay. Natalia says, the hair does make a young man, if I may say, but since I started cutting the ends of my long hair strictly the first week of the moon cycle, obviously, it looks so much better. I'll have to take that into account. That's a good tip of cutting it on the first week of the moon cycle. Yeah, I think that in the past, I've been attached to a youthful appearance. And as I move forward into the later half of my 40s, there's going to be certain things that I won't be able to hide. I have some gray coming in on my beard. The temples are starting to go a little bit. There's a little sunshine spot starting here. There's going to be indicators that will not be able to be easily hidden about the actual stage of life that I'm encountering. And how do we become okay with that? How do we embrace it rather than reject it and hide it and try to fix it, quote unquote? When you can learn to accept yourself just as you are in the life stage that you're at, there's so much less violence that we can perpetrate on ourselves and on others. So that's something that I'm really working hard on, and it's not easy to do. I would like to be healthy. I think that means different things at different stages of life as well. Sometimes we have to learn to manage our energy appropriately. But yeah, it's an interesting exercise for sure. Karen says, as a Sag rising, I'm really intrigued by this Cazimi, especially all happening across from Pluto. Right. So Karen is bringing up a really important point about this, is that Jupiter is the host of Sagittarius and Pisces. So not only are we going to be understanding our new role or getting ideas or insights about a new role, we also are going to get a new start in the Sagittarius and Pisces topics of our life. For Karen, for example, Sagittarius is her first house. She may be feeling a huge renewal when it comes to the Jupiter Cazimi, especially with this happening in her 9th house, she could have a whole new belief system that's coming. Maybe it's some of the third coast mojo magic doing its magical stuff. I don't know. Just mess with you. But I think that the other thing it could be too is like you could have a new relationship with your body as a Sag rising. First house is related to how we see ourselves out in the world, how we relate to the body. So there could be some new insight or belief system physically for you, Karen. So this is how do we make the connection at the Jupiter Cazimi with the Sagittarius and Pisces topics that we're dealing with in life as well. So that brings us to the full moon in Aquarius. We have really broken that down in great detail. So that's the 29th. Now we're going to move forward into how this is going to unfold. Okay. So the first aspect that the moon makes is the trine to Mars. So the moon is going to be making a trine to Mars from 22 degrees of Aquarius. So this is the first aspect specifically when the moon escapes from the bond, when it is outside of a 15-degree arc of separation from either a conjunction or an opposition. And astrologers in ancient times would look at that and say, what's the issues that are going to come to light when it comes out of the bond? And in this case, it's in Aquarius 3. It's making a trine to Gemini 3, Mars. This is a point that's going to activate the Mars-Venus square. So to me, this is realization of what we need to leave behind. And what do we need to leave behind? Too many thoughts, too many options, too much conflict that is polarizing, and maybe causing us to be too attached to an old form, right? So we're going to be realizing that it's time to move on when the moon trines Mars and escapes from the bond. The sun moves into Leo 2 on August the 2nd. So we went over that in great depth and in detail in the Astrology of August if you'd like more information on that, or you can get the Decans of Leo webinar. I go through all of that in that series as well. But the gist of that is that we're moving forward from feeling some stage fright and some fear and testing out a new role to the joy of being able to embrace a role that's appropriate for us, and the victory of being able to bridge our inner life with our outer persona successfully. The other thing that happens when the sun moves into Leo 2, okay, second decan Leo, this is go to August 2nd here. Mars goes out of bounds at 24 degrees of Gemini, okay? Now, all of the themes that I've been talking about with Gemini 3, the inability to carry multiple options forward, the desire to polarize our thinking to make one person or one thing right and the other person wrong, that all gets supercharged when Mars goes out of bounds, okay? I think it could be a dangerous intellectual time. Like it could be a time where people are expressing very, very strong opinions that they would normally not be expressing. Again, an opportunity for us to understand the types of influences of the Enanke of the planets, the force that compels the Earth to spin, and then our ability to choose awareness and pronoia to bring about a better outcome where we're not just being guided by our ignorance or by our Enanke. So Mars in out of bounds, potentially we could see more extreme forms of violent communication. We could see people making violent ultimatums, which is very dangerous to do because this decan is the last decan before the summer solstice where the sun changes direction. This is why the ultimatums that are made in this decan, the lines in the sand, they don't carry over because oftentimes we have to reverse direction. You will most likely see, because I doubt that the autocrats in power, I doubt that most of them have a lot of astrological pronoia. Many of them are very archetypal figures that are playing out great mythological dramas of their charts. And when they are going to be doing that, they will probably be making very autocratic decrees and ultimatums. Like, so like, let's say with the conflicts, the war that we're seeing in the Middle East, I am almost certain, because it is already happening, but may get worse, that the leadership involved in that war will be making very, very accusatory, black and white, polarizing ultimatums during this time, which can be very dangerous. That can exacerbate an already tenuous situation. In our own lives, I would recommend, as your astrologer, to examine where you are feeling a lack of compromise, or where you are projecting a shadow energy onto someone or something else and creating conflict through that. A lot of times what the Gemini archetype will do, and this I'm drawing a lot from Liz Green and her psychological approach to astrology, is it will, to make the choice, like the choice of Castor and Pollux, to be able to keep one twin alive, right? With one twin died in a fight with other twins, and the other immortal twin went and petitioned Zeus to allow them to share time on Olympus, because he couldn't bear that the other would not exist or had to stay in Hades. And sometimes, to be able to make a difficult choice, we feel like we have to make the other choice wrong. We have to judge it as wrong or evil, okay? And I think that the more mature response to this Mars is understanding that sometimes choices, other paths, may just not be appropriate for us at that moment. And how do we do so without demonizing the other party, the other choice, the other perspective, the other idea, and just own the fact that we have limited time, resources, and abilities to carry out the missions that we have. And accept that without othering is, I think, very important during the Mars out of bounds in Gemini phase. Now, you are going to see leadership that preys upon violent communication, othering people in an extreme way. And as citizens who would love to see a different society and a different example, we have to model that in our personal interactions with other people. So this is where I think the paranoia comes in, and the ability to do so. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be things that ignite the strong disgust, the strong, negative shadow reaction. But this is why we understand it now, so that when we're in the moment later, we're not necessarily in a Mars out of bounds right now, but it's better to anticipate it and prepare, so that in the moment when we're feeling like, I really want to make a strong judgment, of negative judgment, and point a finger at someone when Mars goes out of bounds in Gemini, I want to draw a line in the sand. You could catch yourself and say, you know what? I have been reflecting on this. I've been preparing myself for this moment. And I remember in that live stream, we went and talked about how to create a better circumstance through our awareness of it. And you can catch yourself in that moment. And that's really powerful. That's why we do this work. Let's see. Karen says, I definitely think the oil is part of the ninth house revolution. I love that, Karen. I love that you're getting some good value out of the Third Coast Mojo experience thus far. And sorry for the minor Jupiter, or the minor Mercury retrograde snafu that we had with it. We had a little bit of a different name on something. It was just we couldn't escape the Mercury retrograde, but it was most definitely made for you. I remember talking about your chart with it as well, and a lot of love went into it. There was just just a slight communication error. Kate says, Jupiter being harmony, truth, friendship, and the sun being here, exposure, plus Pluto, the full moon being family, community, being witnessed. I think of the company you keep reflecting and exposing, in line with the idea of allies versus adversaries. The moon may expose an alliance for DT that may be in conflict to collective values. I mean, yeah, I feel like we've seen a lot of those already. So I think that's a very real possibility for sure. A continuation of that, a revelation of that. Karen says, wow, Kate, that's pretty darn good. I agree. That's a really good observation, Kate. Yeah, kind of scary. Good. Okay. That brings us to our last quarter phase of this cycle. And this is happening on August the 5th. All right. And this is the moon in Taurus 2, excuse me, second decan Taurus, about 13 degrees of Taurus, squaring the sun at 13 degrees of Leo. Now, there's some interesting fixed stars within this, but the general gist, before we look into that, is, let's see here. We have the Six of Wands associated with the sun in Leo 2, a Jupiter-ruled decan that's associated with harmony between our inner and outer expression, validation from our community, success is associated with this. And this is what we're trying to consciously achieve. The moon is showing us a place where we may need to release some attachment, okay, in the exalted sign. This is a powerful position for the lights. The sun is in its own domicile and the moon is exalted. We may need to release some of that energy to achieve the goal of the sun. So what is Leo 3 asking us to release? Getting stuck in a rut, I think. That is a decan that's associated with habitual movement, consistency over time. I know for me personally, this will probably be powerful because this is right on my midheaven. The moon is, by the way. I tend to be very... I try to create success through consistency. I have a really somewhat rigid structure to my week. It has helped me to be productive in the past because sometimes I struggle with focus challenges. So having a very rigid structure helps me to stay focused. But there will be times when that rigid structure could be limiting to my authentic expression of the moment. Sometimes our routines can feel suffocating. Sometimes the routines that we have aren't meeting the new needs that are being presented to us. Like I have desires to do some new things, some new classes, some new ways of facilitating my career. And I may have to reduce my attachment to the way I've always done something. So there may be something in your life where to come into more of a authentic expression, you may need to reduce attachment to a material rut or routine. Now the fixed stars associated with it, the sun is on the fixed star Dubhe or Dubhe. It's like it's a fixed star in Ursa Major, I believe, the bear, and it's one of the constellations that circle around the pole star area. And that has a signification around being calm, consistent. There is energy in that decan or that experience around patience, stillness, alignment with natural forces, like embracing silence. So we might need to be a little bit quieter in the way that we go about things. Maybe we don't need to announce everything right away. Maybe we need to allow things to cook a little bit and be patient and still. And this is also related to the fixed star at 13 degrees of Taurus, which is Menkar. And Menkar is in the mouth of the whale, Cetus. And this is not like a nice, free willy type of whale. This is like a sea monster type of whale, like the white whale of Moby Dick. Okay, it's something that can swallow us whole. And the associations with Menkar is feeling swallowed whole by, especially with the moon here, by the masses, by the emotions of the masses. So how do we differentiate between our own feelings and the feelings of the masses and the groupthink if we want to maintain our individuality and our own ability to think critically? How do we avoid joining mass movements of violence or anger that aren't effective? How do we redirect our energy towards cooperation to enact the actual type of change and actions that we do want to see, rather than getting swept up in negative groupthink? I guess would be part of what I would say with this. Doesn't mean that we can't join with others to enact change. Just means that sometimes, like for example, in the French Revolution, like that got carried to the point of like an extreme where the people that were actually trying to enact change became autocratic and destructive themselves. So when we go to extremes, we end up having difficulties. Let's see. Natalia says, multiple cultures emphasize the need for not just good deeds, but also for good words and even thoughts. So your current practices for the upcoming Mars transit is definitely in alignment with that. I feel it, Natalia. I feel like this book is the perfect manual for the North Node in Aquarius and the challenges that will bring us, and a very good antidote or balm for the difficult parts of Mars in Gemini. So I agree, and I feel that as well. So, but it makes me happy to see confirmation of that cross culturally as well. Karen says, no problem at all. I feel care and protection in this oil. Very special experience. I appreciate that, Karen. Thank you for your patience with that. And thank you for understanding as well. And again, a lot of love was put into it. Okay. Let's see. Natalia says, as I have natal 8-degree Aquarius sun ruling my 23 degrees Leo moon, I guess I should pay attention to this full moon. Yeah, that's true. This is going to be a pretty active one for you, friend. Kate says, you just made me think of a song that's about secret goals, holding them close. I have to find it. I've been listening to it a lot. Okay. Yes. All right, so let's keep moving forward. I want to be able to address every single comment in depth, but I'm feeling a little bit of a fatigue personally, and I want to get through a few more things. So let's keep going. The 6th, we have a kind of a busy day. Venus is going to be moving into Libra. What's going on here? I'm just going by hours, aren't I? That's probably why. Let's get Venus into Libra here. There it is. So here's Venus in Libra, August 6th. The sun makes its trine to Saturn, and Mercury exits its retrograde shadow at roughly 26 degrees of Cancer. One cool side note about this is my Gemini Venus at work, so forgive me for this, but the fixed star at about 25 or 26 degrees of Cancer is Procyon. And Procyon is in a constellation called the Little Dog, which many astrologers actually think is a reference to raccoons. We've been seeing in the consciousness little Jimothy, the little raccoon that has like a short spine condition, and he has captured the national attention in America and maybe worldwide. And I just find it really fascinating that Mercury stationed retrograde at the fixed star associated with raccoons, and it's going to be escaping the shadow period around that period of time. Maybe Jimothy will, I don't know, maybe the fascination with that will resolve itself. But yeah. Let's see. Natalia says, I'm afraid I missed the book part. Is that the Revolution of Persephone you mentioned last time? Oh, Natalia, we have been discussing Persephone's Revolution a little bit, which is by Rosie Finn in relationship to Pluto Out of Bounds. But the book of the week is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall B. Rosenberg. And it's really been helping me to think about how to communicate in ways that are much more effective for observing, getting clear about my feelings, and then expressing a need in a way that is a request versus a demand. So we observe things without making judgment. We state how that is making us feel with I statements. And then we make a request of a need that we have, identify a need and make a request, which while also leaving space for the person to acquiesce to the request or to not. And that's the difference between a request and a demand. Is when we make a demand, we ask for something and then we perpetuate violence and try to coerce somebody if we don't get what we want. Whether when we have a request, we allow space for the person to, say no. And that's something that we're having a lot of difficulty with in the public discourse lately. Let's see. It's called "Don't Tell Your Dreams" by Stoslev and Lovics. That's cool. I'll try to check that one out. "Don't Tell Your Dreams." Stoslev and Lovics. Talia says, okay. Say any spiritual practice makes bad transits less noticeable. I agree with that. We don't have to be cast about by the astrology as helplessly as we might have felt had we not had the tools to meet the challenges of the moment. Doesn't mean that we won't experience some painful things. It just means that we can start to mitigate and alleviate that through like these skills that we're learning. Natalia says, thank you, Spencer. As I happen to live in the Middle East, nonviolence is essential. Natalia, I think you would love this book. He actually mentions the conflict between Israel and Palestine a lot. And he's a Libra, by the way, with Saturn in Aquarius III, right where the North Node is going to be. He has Venus in Libra, Sun in Libra, and he talks a lot about dealing with macrocosm and microcosm issues, dealing with personal relationships, dealing with diplomacy, dealing with talking with groups, and the emotional intelligence that we can bring to be able to understand other people's perspectives so both parties can get what they want. And I can't think of a better situation than the conflict that you are living at the front lines of to utilize this type of material. So I hope it serves you well, friend. And I really, really highly recommend it. I would love to hear your feedback as to how to utilize those skills. Okay, let's keep going. The Sun-Saturn trine, maybe we're understanding our new value system and we're able to express that a little bit more authentically. Mercury exiting the retrograde shadow, we understand how to express our feelings with and take some of the excessive emotion out of it potentially so we can be a little bit more objective in our thinking. I think that's part of it. This is another day. Let's see. Natalia says, with natal Venus and Mercury in Aquarius 3, I can definitely relate. Oh, I love that, friend. KP Karen says, gonna check that out. Kate, love the music recommendations. I always love getting music recommendations, friends. I really do. The song of the week was Gautier's "Someone That I Used to Know," and it felt a lot about the feelings of exile that come through this full moon. Just the feeling of like not being able to get our individual needs met, and then the schadenfreude of pain of someone else's suffering and things like that just felt appropriate in that moment. The sun moves into malefic enclosure after the trine with Saturn. So this is a period from the 6th to the 11th where our authenticity, even though we understand with the trine to Saturn, our value system, it may be coming into a conflict with someone else's value system. And how do we be patient with understanding the opposing perspective while limiting we may feel like we're not able to express ourselves authentically during this period of time. And I think a lot of it is because of our values coming into conflict with the need to have empathy for someone else's. And the desire with Mars and Gemini. Remember, within this malefic enclosure, it is enclosed by Mars and Saturn. So you've got Mars making the casting array on one side and Saturn casting array on the other. So we're enclosed by an attachment to our own perspective with a need to understand someone else's, and the tendency of Mars of wanting to go to extremes of black and white thinking. So how do we work through this? Well, practicing empathy, getting clarity about what the other party desires as well as what we desire. of resisting the urge to create violence through casting our own shadow onto someone else or to making ultimatums and declarative statements. This is how we navigate a malefic enclosure of the sun so that we don't completely destroy our relationships or each other. Okay. Let's see. Karen says, I used to listen to that Gautier song on repeat. I really enjoy that song. He is an incredible artist. I understand why he did what he did, which is drop a single that got really popular and then disappear from the public eye. He's actually a Leo North Node like me, and I met him once. To be full disclosure, he came to my town, and I saw him playing frisbee with his crew before the show, and I was like, "Hey, what's up?" His name's Wally DeBacker, and I was like, "Hey, do you mind if we jump?" I just said some nice things to him, and he's like, "Do you want to play frisbee with us?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll play frisbee with Gautier." So we played some frisbee, and like he invited us. Actually, he was playing frisbee to the point where we had missed getting in line because it was general admission. And he's like, "You want to come in the back door and get in early?" And I was like, "Yeah, hell yeah." So we got in the back door, sat in like the front row, and he invited us backstage after the show. And I've actually emailed back and forth with him once or twice many years ago. And very, very nice individual. And I think very sensitive. And really, I think that experience probably was difficult for him, like getting so much exposure. And it really, I think, speaks to the difficulty of navigating a spotlight. The sad thing about the Gautier thing is that he's really, really talented, and he has so many other songs that are incredible. And those of you who may be living in Australia, you know that he's not a one-hit wonder. He's actually very popular in Australia and had a lot of hits over there as well. Just in sort of the American consciousness, it was kind of that one song, but super amazing. He reminds me a lot of Peter Gabriel, and how talented Peter Gabriel was, and Sting a little bit. And he should be mentioned with those artists, but I think there's just something where he did not enjoy the spotlight. I think that I'm making some assumptions, but that's my instinct. Hey Rachel, what's up? Rachel Olone is here. What's up, Sarah Sinonach? I don't know if I don't know if I'm pronouncing the Irish well there with your username. It says, "Hi Spencer, good to be here for the live. Life's been a bit upside down lately this year. Haven't always been able to tune in on Friday, but always try to check in with your wisdom days after with the owl." There you go. I love it. Rachel, it's really good to see you. I hope everything's going well your way, friend. Says Aquarius Sun and Cancer rising, Leo North Node 2. So feeling the tide of life is quite full this past while. Hope everyone in the community is doing well in their corner of the earth. And to you as well, friend. Hope everything's going well with you. I think sometimes life just gets busy and complicated, and we're all doing our best. But really, thank you for stopping in. Let me know that you're still here. I really appreciate it. So malefic enclosure, Sun having a little bit difficulty with getting validation, I think, for our authentic self. And how do we give ourselves validation during this period of time, right? I would say also be careful of trying to validate yourself in a way that is just like, well, I believe it and I'm right and I must be validated for that. This is the type of energy that says, how about we get curious about each other's perspective, and we don't rush to making ultimatums about an alternate perspective. And that's going to help us navigate this 5-day stretch a lot better. Mercury moves into Leo on the 9th. Okay, so moving out of the Cancer cycle that brought us the retrograde, moving into potentially an ability to communicate in a little bit more dramatic fashion. We might be asking a lot of questions about how we utilize our will and our spotlight with Mercury in Leo. On the 10th, Venus trines Pluto and opposes Neptune, and Mars is moving into Cancer on the 11th and trining the North Node before it does so. So you may have an ability to bring something up from under the surface and create more harmony with it, with Venus moving into Libra and being able to harmonize a little bit better, right? Where we have an awareness of some injustices, but this might be the point where everybody's gotten this book, has really internalized the concepts, and is able to start communicating with one another in a little bit more just manner. And that could facilitate some harmony, hopefully. Be careful of being too idealistic about it, though. Sometimes when we're starting this stuff, we think that one book is going to change the rest of our lives and solve every problem we have. I know that sometimes I'll get into that mindset. We have to be realistic about what we can achieve in the current circumstances. Mars moves into Cancer on the 11th. Okay, so into its exile, or excuse me, into its fall in Cancer. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and it's in its fall in Cancer. And it is moving out of the, it is allowing the sun to move out of malefic enclosure. So it's the end of the malefic enclosure of the sun once Mars moves into Cancer. It's going to shift some of the conflict area from like idealism and ideas and communication towards feelings. Our feelings might be the avenue to explore some of the martial things. And some of the conflicts may move away from a social relationship into more of a personal relationship or more of a personal domestic situation. So we have to be careful of that. That's the moment also when Pluto goes out of bounds. We discussed that at quite length in the Astrology of August. So if you want to hear my thoughts on Pluto out of bounds and the Persephone myth, I had a lot of them during that 4-hour plus live stream. I don't have the energy to rehash all of that, but the basic gist of it is Pluto is going out of bounds in the southern declination, which is related to reform, revolution, returning of power to the people. And this final period of the next 10 years, when Pluto goes in and out of bounds in the southern declination, is the last time that Pluto will go out of bounds, north or south, for the next 3,000 years. And there is, I think, a small potential, maybe a big potential, that we move out of the cycle of power, rise of power, autocracy, and the victimization that happens through that, and then the subsequent pushback and revolution, and then the rise of an autocratic power, and then a revolution and a reform and a rise of autocratic power. We might be moving out of that cycle in our lifetime. Very exciting. I would like to read more about it. The problem I have with reading is I like to read multiple books at the same time. I blame Venus and Gemini, but I've usually got 3 or 4 books going simultaneously, and I need to finish all of them. so be patient with me. I'll finish the Pluto's Persephone's Revolution. I'll finish Nonviolent Communication. I'm trying to finish the Silmarillion this week, which is challenging. I recommended to some people in my family The Flowering Wand, which is Rewilding the Sacred Masculine by Sophie Strand. Great book too. Really important for these times. So we'll get through it. Mercury opposes Pluto on this day that Mars moves into Cancer and Pluto out of bounds, but also trines Neptune, and Venus trines Uranus. So could be some difficult communications, especially in our family relationships around this 11th. This is a precursor to the new moon solar eclipse. So this is the last little thing that we're looking at here. Really powerful eclipse on the south node. Okay, so this is an eclipse at about 20 degrees of Leo, very close to the south node, which is near Regulus. It is a time to begin to step down off of thrones of power or off of belief systems that we defend with every inch of our being and passion. It's knowing when to say when. It's knowing when certain beliefs or hills aren't worth dying for, or dying on, I guess you could say. It's also understanding that sometimes retreat does not mean defeat. Sometimes when we retreat from a battle that we can't win, we live to fight another day. And this eclipse is going to start teaching us that throughout the unfolding of this cycle. So I will do an entire live stream on the new moon solar eclipse in Leo in the coming weeks. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I was not dishonest, but I made a mistake here about saying it was the last thing, because the true last thing is understanding that right after the new moon solar eclipse, the moon goes void, of course, from the 13th to the 15th. So even with the awareness of what is happening at that eclipse, we may have to take a few days to process it rather than immediately taking action. So if you are planning on doing some things with eclipse energy, be patient with that process, because a Hellenistic void of course moon is much more rare than the modern interpretation of it. And usually it speaks towards nothing coming of the matter. So we want to make sure that the moon is able to manifest our best possible outcomes by reflecting for a period of time. I like to use void of course moons to just like clean out my basement or clean out the attic or get rid of some stuff. It's a good way to reflect and to clear the decks for better decision making moving forward. As within, so without; as above, so below. So like clearing your physical space can help clear your mind. That's the way that I like to approach it. So that's what I've got for you. Oh my goodness, we made it through. And we have an I-Ching and an animal coming up. I'm just going to check in with the chat first. Let's see. Javiera is here. What's up? So sorry, I never said hello. Thank you, Javier. I appreciate you saying hello. It's nice to know that you're in the chat with us today. Well, everything's going well with you, and that Mercury direct is helping with some of the Gemini stuff you got going on. Karen says, I'm so glad Mars will just be cruising on through Cancer. That retrograde in Cancer last year was brutal. Yeah, it was a doozy for sure. So it is just going to go through a normal cycle through Cancer, so we can be grateful for that. Although I will say, I wonder, with this theory of Mars, this theory of exalted planets in their opposite sign, or fallen planets in retrograde acting like their opposite sign, is what I'm really meaning to say. Was Mars acting exalted during that retrograde? Maybe for better or for worse. Maybe it was like very violent, or very good at strategically doing violence. I don't know, something to reflect upon, but it was difficult, and there was a lot of challenges around that period of time for sure. I can acknowledge that. Natalia says, regarding artists not giving enough recognition, I was told by an astrologer that any of my creative pursuits related to music and public performance might not get recognized because of 12th house Leo moon. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Natalia. That sounds a little disempowering. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that assessment. I think that maybe your artistic revelations may be casting light onto liminal spaces. Could be a different way of thinking about that. It may be a pain point that they may be delayed, or that you may have some fear of bringing them out into the public sphere. But I don't think that necessarily says that you could never do a creative pursuit or get recognition for it. I think that is an example of an astrologer maybe telling you something that could be disempowering to the point of being harmful. So I hope that we can help right that damage here today. Yes, Rachel says, different days ask for different books. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, today was Friday. What did I read today? I was reading a little bit of Austin Coppock and Susie Chang's Deccan books to prepare for this today. And I really would like to engage with the nonviolent communication on this Venus day. Although the Silmarillion, I have some reading due for Monday's book club that I need to work with. Natalia says, I never mastered the Silmarillion, hugely powerful, popular among some of my friends, for which you have to be more mythologically inclined, I guess. It is not the easiest read, Natalia, I will fully admit. There is a lot. And I think the reason for this is there is thousands and thousands of years of history packed into a small section that is almost impossible to examine in the type of narrative detail that we come to appreciate from The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. It is more about world building. There is wonderful narrative parts of the Silmarillion, but there's also parts that are just like an exploration of a map or of like lineages of kings, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I've enjoyed the process. It has made my enjoyment of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, it has increased them, but I can understand how it could be a challenge sometimes. Taku says, I have the same problem, Spencer, with my natal Jupiter and Gemini. I love collecting lots of books. Totally with you, friend. I mean, I have so many books that I've collected over the years, and really, I've actually slowed down a lot in purchasing new books because I want to commit to reading the books that I have. Rachel says, think of it as pollinator reading. Ooh, I love it. I love that. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Agreed about Mars and Cancer. Okay, like that. Though the Mercury retrograde in Cancer was kind of fun and profound for me at times too. Devin says, that's what magic is for. There we go. I like it. Magic has uses, right? Natalia, we use remediation to help consciousness alter things that are less, to help consciousness alter things that are less beneficial, counter things, right? Counteract, right? I'm thinking that's what the intention is, right? Yes, I agree. If we have a moon that is influencing us towards maybe some fear or some difficulty getting public recognition, like here's an example. This is not meant to be a sales pitch, but this is just the first thing that popped into my mind. Crown of Success oil is a Leo oil that's offered at Third Coast Mojo that is utilized with the sun in Leo. That may be something that helps with visibility or helps with confidence around visibility. And there's other magical practitioners or products that could help you do the same, where we utilize a planet at its best position, right? Where the sun is either on, every election that Tanya does with an oil is usually having the target planet on the ascendant or on the midheaven in a place of empowerment, whereas your moon is in a place where it may be pulled away from power. So if you use magical materia that is helping you to feel empowered, it might help to mitigate some of those things. Okay, still recovering from the Mars. Yeah, I think a lot of us were. Rachel says, Spencer, I'm reading a beautiful book called Raising Hair. Oh, don't suggest. No, actually do suggest more books. Just my brain's like, oh man, Rachel, I've got like 4 books going. What are you doing? Like, you know that I can't resist a book recommendation. Spencer says, I'm reading a beautiful book called Raising Hair. Do check it out if you haven't already. It's a beautiful meditation on slowing down to be in relationship with an exquisite animal. Ooh, I like that. That does sound right up my alley. Raising Hair. I will check that out. Natalia says, that astrologer meant that I may be on a popularity quest and spotlight may be hard to come by which I find true and a good exercise for relinquishing the need to be popular altogether. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Rachel says, maybe don't check it out yet. Consciously alter things was the clarification that Devin was making. Yes, I agree. I don't have time to completely navigate all of that statement, Natalia, due to just my own limitations today. But I will say 12th house planets are going through a rebalancing through, and I say this philosophically because it is the joy of Saturn. And Saturn is the planet associated with the goddess Nemesis, which increases that which is excessive and decreases that which is lacking. So it could be one of 2 things. It could be a lack of confidence that you are trying to balance. It could be an overabundance of arrogance or confidence or desire for validation or attention that needs to be rebalanced. So to me, when I see things in the 12th house, it's not that it will never work out. I'm a 12th house Sun and Mercury, for crying out loud. It's just that those planets need to go through a period of maturation through reharmonization. And I know for me, here's an example. The Sun in the 12th house, Mercury in the 12th house. I have had times in the past where I've gone through lack of confidence, all right, where I didn't believe in myself. I've gone through periods where I was very arrogant and expressed my views and my selfhood in an arrogant way. And I'm trying over the course of my life to bring those 2 things in harmony. How do I become more confident so I can express myself, but not so overconfident that I express in an arrogant way? Same thing with Mercury. There are times when I don't want to speak up. There are other times when I can't shut up. So I have to figure out the balance between those 2 things. And how do I learn through experience, sometimes through suffering? And you may be learning through some periods of suffering, but eventually when we learn the balance, we can help alleviate other people's suffering in that same area of life, in my opinion. This is something I learned from Demetra George and her association of the Bodhisattva energy the Buddha who could have ascended to another stage of existence, but chose to remain behind to alleviate the suffering of others. And she associates that with planets in the 12th house. Taku says, if you need book recommendations, I can definitely help too. I know. I love book recommendations, so keep them coming. I may or may not be able to engage with them in the near future just because of just a huge library of things to get through. But I love getting new books. I love books. So it is a love language to me to get book recommendations. And honestly, there's a number of books that I've been recommended from the chat here that I've read and loved, including like Braiding Sweetgrass, Flowering Wand. There's a couple others I'm thinking of. Sand Talk, Tyson Yunkaporta. There's been a lot of great recommendations that have really borne fruit. Natalie says, thank you. I only heard about Sphere and Sundry by the Copics previously regarding elected magical materia. May we have that name? So the Copics are amazing. Sphere and Sundry are really like the gold standard for this type of work. My partner, Tanya Andrews, has her own business that has a slightly different take. Some similarities, but there's a different take on it. Like there's a combination of planetary elected magic and the conjure tradition is what Tanya combines. The hoodoo conjure tradition. It's called Third Coast Mojo, and you can find her on Etsy. So it's just it's a humble little business. It's not quite to the scale of Sphere and Sundry, but I believe that there's room for multiple practitioners to have success. And I think that I utilize Sphere and Sundry's materia as well as my partner's materia. And I think there's enough for everyone to go around. So I love both of those things, and they're both worth supporting. Karen says, my ascendant ruler is in the 12th in opposition to Saturn. It's been humbling, but it does deepen your faith eventually. Hang in there, Natalia. I agree. There is some definitely humbling that comes in 12th house for sure. All right, friends, amazing chats today. Really good insights. I really appreciate hearing from you and getting your recommendations and co-creating with you. Let's put a bow on this one. Wrap it up. I've got a hexagram for you. So the hexagram I have for you is 47, changing 47. It's called oppression, and it is changing to 32, enduring or endurance. There's two changing lines. 47 is a difficult one. 47 says, hey, we're a little bit exhausted. Okay, we are feeling restricted. We may be facing some hardship. Again, this is an opposition between solar and Saturnian energy, with Pluto thrown into the mix, right? So adversity, feeling dried up or at an impasse. Okay, the judgment says oppression, but success. With perseverance, the great person brings about good fortune, no blame. What one says is not believed. So that's interesting. It says, it seems, this is Jack Balkin, The Laws of Change. It seems as if the world is conspiring against you. You are faced with adversity everywhere you turn. Inside, you feel exhausted, tired, and burned out. Can anyone else relate to that? I'm feeling that myself. Life seems to have lost all its spark and attraction, yet the text says that at times of oppression, it holds the promise of success. How can this be? The present situation is a test of your character. It takes a great soul to remain undaunted by adverse circumstances. Right now, there is nothing you can do to make things better. You will simply have to wait out this very trying time. If you let your misfortunes get to you and crush your spirit, you will be utterly lost. But if you can maintain your equanimity and your patience, you will be able to endure, and you will become a stronger, better person in the process. If you do not allow them to defeat you, the difficulties you face will toughen your spirit and shape the conditions of future success. This is why the text states that a great person brings about good fortune. People of truly sound and noble character bend in the face of adversity, but they are not broken. They emerge from the trial with renewed hope, and they will go forward and prevail. They succeed because they possess an inner strength that has been tempered and tested by faith. I love that. Two changing lines. Oppressed by stone, he leans on thorns and thistles. He enters his house but does not see his wife, misfortune. To be oppressed by stone means that a person relies on things that harm him and act in ways that lead to his oppression. He pushes against stone and complains of being oppressed. When when anyone should know that stone is immovable. Okay. He leans on thorns and thistles when everyone knows that they are not stable, and moreover, that they are sharp and will cut him. Finally, he enters his house but shuts himself off from his loved ones. A person who acts in this way can hardly avoid misfortune. You are in great danger now, but the danger lies within yourself. Impatience, indecision, and bad judgment have prevented you from seeing things clearly. You have let yourself become oppressed by things that are not oppressive. Nevertheless, you react as if they were victimizing you, and so you become a victim. You rely on things that are not enduring, and you put your faith in things that are not trustworthy and cannot support you. Therefore, you set yourself up to be disappointed. Finally, you are unable to get your priorities straight, and you cut yourself off from your friends and allies. Therefore, you alienate those that could help you. You must stop behaving this way and get a better perspective on events. Calm and center yourself now before it's too late. Changing line at the fifth place. It says, his nose and feet are cut off. Oppressed by the man with the crimson knee bands. Joy comes slowly. It is beneficial to make offerings and libations. Crimson knee bands were worn by the public executioner. Mutilation, i.e. cutting off parts of the body, was a method of criminal punishment. To have both one's nose and feet cut off means that one suffers oppression both from high and low places. That is, both from one's superiors and one's subordinates. To make offerings and libations means to cultivate an attitude of religious devotion and dedication to what is true and correct despite one's difficulties. You have good intentions and you would like to do the right thing, but others frustrate your efforts. People mistake your motives and mistrust you. You are opposed by those who should help you. You are tangled in a bureaucratic maze. Do not despair. Slowly but surely things will get better. Have patience and maintain your composure. Perseverance in your devotion to the good. Persevere in your devotion to the good and prepare yourself for better times that are sure to come. This is changing to the hexagram 32. Endurance, constancy, long-lasting, duration. Okay. This hexagram says enduring, success, no blame. It is beneficial to persevere. It is beneficial to have somewhere to go. To endure means to keep going despite the obstacles. Endurance is neither stagnation nor a state of rest. It progresses forward. Unlike stagnation, it keeps moving and growing, unlike rest. What endures renews itself and its effects through continuous activity. What endures does so through change, not in spite of change. This always surprises me and is a great reminder with this hexagram. Okay, what endures renews itself and its effects through continuous activity. What endures does so through change, not in spite of change. Its effects are understood against the experience of change. When we see in this cycle of the seasons that continually, we see this in the cycle of seasons that continually renew themselves as the earth moves around the sun. The cycle of seasons repeats perpetually because its underlying causes continue. Plants and animals grow and change as they endure over time. When they cease to grow, they die, and then they cease to endure. So it is in life. All life is change. But in order to make change intelligible, there must be things that persist against change which can be understood. To give your life meaning, you must have something that endures, your identity, your relationships with others, and your principles. If you surrender what is enduring within you, then you surrender to the flux of events and become indistinguishable from them. Then there is nothing left of you. Okay, so this is about connecting with the hub of the wheel. How do you endure in your values, your core values, not ones that have proven to be false, the core things? How do you endure in your faith and perseverance? How do you endure through making adjustments in your life? How do you endure through learning new skills? Okay, if you're not getting what you want by enduring in the same stubborn communication that you've done your entire life, that is a quick way towards death. You will only endure by re-educating yourself, by learning new skills to be able to continue on in this world of flux. So that really, I think the messaging with that is a lot of times we create an enduring character through being flexible and through learning new things and through continually engaging with life, rather than getting so stagnant in our own old belief systems that we aren't able to move forward. This brings us to the animal here. Okay. Okay. Our animal is the Black Panther. Look at this beautiful creature. My goodness. This is, I'm just always astonished by the animal's representation of the astrology. Look at the blackness of Saturn. Saturn is associated with the color black. And look at the light of the sun in this beautiful black creature's eyes. You know, the solar opposition, the Kazemi, right? The rebirth of the sun within the darkness of the opposition to Pluto. This really powerful, just visual example of the sun opposing the moon and Pluto from Leo to Aquarius. But I'm going to read to you about the Black Panther from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez. Black Panther symbolizes a protective, courageous, and powerful guardian. It means darkness, death, and rebirth. It connects us to the astral realm. It symbolizes beauty and grace of movement. Black Panther is a loner. Like this decan of Aquarius is about going off into exile, right? But it will socialize with other loners, right? Venus rules that decan, finding beauty and companionship on the fringes. It symbolizes the feminine power of a mother and the dark moon. This enables you to eliminate fears, especially of the dark, and to turn your life around if needed. Black Panther is a quiet hunter who can freeze in position as it watches its prey. This is a sign to you that sometimes it's better to be still and quiet than to move forward in a rush. This animal has a talent for beauty, clairvoyance, courage, cunning, the darkness of the moon. I think that even though it's a full moon, it's in a sign associated with darkness, with death, empathy, enlightenment, feminine power, grace, a hunter, independence, intuition, magical power, precision, rebirth, secretiveness, silence, skillfulness, strength of being, and strength of character and wisdom. There's challenges with becoming too involved with the dark areas of metaphysical ideas, with being calculating and ferocious, overly secretive, ruthless, and unsociable. When Black Panther appears, it is a sign that now is the time to reclaim any of your strength and power that you may have given to someone else or lost. Sometimes through seeking validation, friends. You are at home in the darkness, are powerful, and can be aggressive when needed. You are an empathic intuitive who holds your natural abilities close. Black Panther is assigned to embrace your fearlessness and to go after your prey, which may be a new job, a new home, or any other goal. You will begin a new chapter in your life if Black Panther is walking by your side. Black Panther gives you the strength of success. It symbolizes the need to listen more. You can uncover a lot of valuable information by paying close attention to what others are saying without getting so involved in the conversation that you give away your secrets. This animal can assist you when you need to heal wounds of the past and gives you the strength to learn from the past and move into the future. It can help you awaken to your clairvoyance, clairaudience, and empathic abilities. Black Panther encourages you to listen to your inner voice and act on your intuition. It can help you through hidden wisdom to keep your secrets. It will help you to see upcoming opportunities. When you need to see the minute details or the bigger picture of a situation, Black Panther can enlighten through positivity to enable you to see clearly. It awakens your passion and desire to succeed. Pretty powerful. There's an embracing of the shadow energy. It's an embracing the fear of the unknown as well. You know, so I think that sometimes what the sun can do in this circumstance is it shines light on the things that we fear. We may be coming into a confrontation with our fears during this full moon. And by shining our light on it, that helps us to understand them, to empathize with them and with others, and to eventually to heal them. And I think Black Panther is a wonderful example of that moving forward. Okay, friends, I'm going to check in one more time with our chat, and then we're going to wrap for the day. I've got a cat in here that is scratching at the door and needs to go. He's like, it's time to go, girl. All right, let me see. But I'm going to check in. It says with the night. Okay, let me see. I love these comments. It sounds like some of these are conversations between people in the chat. So I'm just searching if there's a question for me here. Javier says, perfect omen for my Mayan ancestors. Ooh, I like that, Javier. Yes, I love that. I'm going to pull out the black tourmaline. That's a good one. That's a good one for this. That's a good one for this moon. Really, it's a really good observation, Javier. Black tourmaline absorbs negative energy and helps us to process some of those fears. Rachel says, amazing, lovely to be back. Appreciate you being here too, friend. Thank you so much for stopping in and really for letting me know that you're here. I know a lot of people sometimes listen and lurk in the background, but it really does fill my heart up when I hear you all in the chat and know that you're here with me listening. So thank you. And after the fact, if you're listening after the fact, send me a comment. Let me know how this is landing for you, and if there's any stories that resonate or examples of things in your life. It helps to connect the astrology with your lived experience. So thanks again, friends. All right, that's what I've got for you. Do me a huge favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me over at social media at Spencer Michaud. Go find me at spencermichaud.com. Support Third Coast Mojo. Embrace your magical practitioners, and take it easy. Take some time to relax and to have some fun too. In regards to all of Leo season, I think there's a desire to have some youthful energy. Like, remember, the sun in the tarot is associated with the Leo card, innocence. I think that there's also some associations with finding strength in overcoming our baser instincts. And I think that a lot of the things we talked about today are trying to help us overcome our fears through wisdom, through maturity, and through empathy. So I hope that you'll take that with you into your life in the next few weeks here ahead. And remember, be kind to yourself first. Identify the needs that you have. Identify your feelings first through observations and what those observations are triggering feeling-wise in you. Identify what need is being met or not being met. And then go about making some requests, not only of yourself, but maybe even others, in ways that leave space for them to also make requests and to have freedom to be able to utilize their own will while simultaneously allowing you to utilize your will. That's how we come to win-win situations. So can't recommend Nonviolent Communication enough by Marshall Rosenberg. So go check this book out. Have a great weekend. Have a great experience. Appreciate all of you. Got some, so Karen says, thanks, Spencer, referring back to this often with the month. Much love to everyone here. Appreciate you, Karen. Thank you so much. And thank you for supporting Third Coast Mojo. Rachel says, I'll remember this comment too. Oh, I love it. Devin says, thank you. Be blessed, Spencer. Thank you, Devin. Hope everything stays safe if you're going to Burning Man, Devin. Natalia says, thank you all in the chat. Thanks, Spencer, for all the holy work. Appreciate you, Natalia. And hope you're staying safe in your corner of the world as well. Javier says, hope everyone has a terrific week. Thank you, Taku. All right, friends. Have a great one. We'll see you the next time. Peace.